program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
This meeting of the Eau Claire City Council will come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton.
Here.
Emmanuel. Kincaid.
Here.
Klinkhammer.
Here.
Mitchell.
Here.
Strobel.
Here.
T-Walt.
Here.
Von Hayden. Wells.
Here.
Worthman. John.
Here.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk, and welcome everyone to the September 11th, 2017 session of the Eau Claire City Council, a date that our country certainly remembers year after year. Tonight we conduct our public hearings and hold some public discussions in which we seek your input, engage with you in perhaps some questions about topics that are on your mind and that are on the agenda, all in preparation for our legislative session, which convenes tomorrow afternoon in these chambers at 4 p.m. Unlike the Plan Commission, we take public input on Monday night. We hold our legislative session in which we make decisions on Tuesday, though it's a little bit different. Tonight we have some interesting topics on our agenda. We're going to consider our first ever public art ordinance, which is a very good thing. We're going to consider a couple of rezonings and look at a site plan for our new fire department. So we have some important items on our agenda. For those of you who wish to speak tonight, I'll just briefly review the protocol. After I introduce the agenda item, staff will make a presentation, and then the item becomes open for public input. You can approach the podium on the topic that's of interest to you. Begin by stating your name and your address. We do have a 5-minute speaking limit in City Council meetings. We find that that keeps the meeting moving along, and that it is as fair to the person who speaks last as the person who spoke first. So we hold everyone to a 5-minute limit. You do not need to take up the whole 5 minutes, of course, but they are there for you should you need them. We help you mark that time by a lighting system. When you begin to speak, a green light will be lit. A yellow light warns you that you have about a minute left, and a red light means that your 5 minutes is up. If you're still speaking, I will politely ask you to bring your comments to a close when the red light is lit. Lastly, if you want to speak or you have something on your mind but you're uncomfortable speaking or you run out of time, there are comment sheets at the back of chambers. They are blue. You can write out your comment, and we will receive that written comment before our legislative session tomorrow afternoon. And if you have any problems, you can ask Ms. Marola right up here, who's happy to help you with anything that might arise during the course of the meeting. We do welcome you and are, as always, are grateful to Community Television for streaming and broadcasting these proceedings for people who cannot attend in person. With that introduction, we will open our meeting with item 1, a public hearing on an ordinance to amend Chapter 9.76 of the Code, entitled Parks and Public Grounds, to include public art encroachments. Mr. Pippinger.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a PowerPoint presentation for you, so the City of Eau Claire recognizes the contribution public art can make to the culture, well-being, and enjoyment of the community. The Public Arts Council was formed as part of Leadership Eau Claire program and is working with the City of Eau Claire to place art in public places. Art has a powerful impact get me here?
I'm sorry.
I'm
I
sorry.
was trying to motion the people in the audio room. It looks like to us that your microphones are not working.
I'll speak up loudly.
I just wanted to ask. Yes? Oh, they are working.
Great.
That little red light just isn't on, so we were worried.
Okay,
They
sure.
say, A-okay. Okay, sorry.
The public art has a powerful economic impact on the state of Wisconsin. It generates $535 million annually in the state. It supports over 22,000 jobs, and it generates $64.9 million in state and local government revenue. And this is according to the May 2017 Municipal Magazine article. The ordinance specification is to amend Chapter 9.76 of the of Parks Public Grounds to add Section 9.76.230 entitled Public Art Regulation. The purpose of the ordinance is to regulate the public art that is allowed in city parks and on city property. Permit details of the ordinance. The permit length, City Council may grant a permit for up to 3 years, and then additionally, permits are eligible for 3-year renewals. The process of the application, the artist will work with the Arts Council, who will submit the application to the Community Services Department. The application will go to Waterways and Parks Commission for recommendation if applicable, and the application will then come to the City Council for approval. Public art definition. Public art consists of those displays of art installed on or within a city park or green space or other city-owned real property as may be permitted. Public art shall not include art installed by or on behalf of the city department of its own initiative or requests, graffiti abatement, wayfinding, public safety, or other public improvement projects. The next part, we talk about location restrictions. This may sound very negative to some respect, but again, what it is designed to do as an ordinance is to give you some guidelines in which to places where art can be applied. Public art shall not be affixed to a landmark building or structure that is on or eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, be permitted on masonry or natural stone surfaces through the application of paint or other like materials, interfere with or otherwise deter existing or intended future park, green space, or city-owned real property uses, operations, and maintenance. Additionally, shall not be permitted within the grounds of any city cemetery, memorial, or tribute space or other similar location, be located on or within any detention pond or similar environmental facility, impede growth of landscaping, native plants, or neighborhood gardens and shall abide by the city's planting guidelines, inhibit access to the property or parcel on which it is located, be permitted on parcels of land declared as excess property unless the public art is temporary, will not cause damage, and will be removed within 30 days of installation or sooner. These next restrictions relate to public safety issues. Public art shall not be located within 10 feet of any curb ramp or on the edge of any trail, path, or similar location. Restrict any line of sight or vision triangle for vehicular traffic or otherwise reduce public safety. Be designed to draw vehicle operators, pedestrians, or cyclists into portions of the right-of-way not intended for their specific use. Or be located on any trail or path or other similar location. In cases of murals, we do have instances or additional restrictions on murals. If public art is intended to be applied on the side of a building or on a sidewalk or other paved surface as a mural or other similar displays, these additional restrictions apply. It shall consist of either chalk or paint and as necessary contain a non-slip additive. It shall not create a multi-dimensional effect or optical illusion on any surface intended for the use by pedestrians. It shall not interfere with the purpose or function of the pavement or building. Additionally, if located on a surface intended for use by pedestrians for interaction or entertainment, it shall be located only where there is a minimum surface width of 10 feet and shall leave a minimum 4 feet of clearance. That is an ADA compliance regulation requirement. It shall be repainted or reapplied within 60 days of written notice by the city at applicant's sole expense. Additional restrictions: public art shall not reduce public safety, contain obscenity, imitate traffic signs, symbols, and signals in any form or include other text, numerals, or symbols that may distract vehicle operators if public art is visible from the right-of-way, consist of advertising, constitute a public nuisance. Public art shall comply with all other provisions in the City Code of Ordinances. The duration of any park, green space, or other property closure requested by the applicant for installation of art is subject to approval by the Director of Community Services. Conditions of the ordinance: public art may be permitted within the interior of any city-owned building, pavilion, shelter, or other structure or structured area subject to approval by the city. The applicant must provide insurance in a minimum amount of $1 million and name the city as an additional insured. This is something that the Public Art Council is working on, so they plan on having that secured for artists that come forth with ideas. The city may remove, alter, reconstruct, or relocate any public art or require the applicant to do so at the applicant's sole expense. Applicants must sign waivers or agreements exonerating the city of any liability for damages connected to the use of public art or caused by construction, operation, or maintenance of such public art. Additionally, because we are creating another ordinance, we are looking at recommending the ordinance amendment to the definition of graffiti. And this would be by adding to section 9.65.020, graffiti shall not include public art approved in accordance with section 9.76.230. Because art is in the eye of the beholder there. Here are some examples of some public art that we could see in the future in the city of Eau Claire. I would like to take this time to thank the various departments that worked on this ordinance. Additionally, the Public Arts Council of Ann Yoder, Greg Johnson, and Chris Salewski for their help and feedback in the creation of this ordinance. Additionally, the Waterways and Parks Commission recommended approval of this ordinance at their August 23rd meeting. Modifications were made to the draft ordinance based upon initial feedback from the commission. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Pippinger. Councilmember Mitchell has a question. Right here.
Thank you. Will the applicant always be the Public Arts Council?
It doesn't have to be that way. If they want to come forth on their own volition and submit something, they can do so. But they would still have to abide by that insurance requirement.
Do you mean the artists could come right to City Council?
No, they could submit an application directly to the Community Service Department, and then we would take it through that other process of Waterways and Parks and/or Council, or certainly the Council, but it may not have to go to Waterways and Parks.
Will the Public Arts Council offer a recommendation, or they will, if the piece appears on our agenda, it's been recommended, because it's made it through, right?
That would be correct. That would, it would be something that would be vetted out through the Public Arts Council, the Community Services Department, the Waterways and Parks Commission, and eventually to the City Council.
Okay. Other questions? Councilmember T. Walt?
Thank you, Council President. You mentioned in one of the early ones about any art that distracts pedestrians. Wouldn't that be wise to put it to all public, whether you're driving a bicycle, whether you're driving a car, and there's some perspective on a building or that pulls attention away? Was there any discussion of that, or is there a way to look at that, is my question.
Yes, that is part of it. I mentioned it earlier, is that it cannot be on any trails.
But what about buildings? It only mentioned pedestrian. It didn't mention other members of the public when you were reading the bullets.
I would say the intent is any distraction that would be, that would cause, in one of the sections, I do mention that if it causes distraction to the pedestrians, that it would be something that could create a situation where you wouldn't approve the art.
I guess I'm hung up on the singular term pedestrian instead of public. So if you're driving, if you're bicycling, does that same apply?
I would say it does say designed to draw vehicle operators, pedestrians, and cyclists into portions of the
Thank you.
right.
I didn't catch that on
Sure.
the slide yet. Thank you.
Councilmember Beaton.
Thank you. During the Waterways and Parks Commission meeting, we had a long discussion about the part of the ordinance that says public art shall not include expressive speech protected by the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, and nothing in this chapter is intended to convert any public property into forum for protected speech. Now that was just something that was talked about you were there. It was talked about a lot during the meeting, and I was wondering if you wouldn't mind going into what that means and how that would kind of express itself in the real world.
Well, what I would, if council president would allow, would look at the city of attorney to perhaps give some feedback on that language that's in the ordinance on that.
Mr. Nick?
Sure, happy to. Both this phrase as well as all the nots, really, even though they're phrased in the negative, what it means is that really everything else is okay. So it's easier to kind of sometimes say what things aren't. So by saying that public art, which is now subject to these regulations, should council pass the ordinance, by saying that expressive First Amendment speech is not public art, what it's saying is it's not subject to these rules, because if it would be a prior restraint on constitutionally protected First Amendment speech. So to regulate First Amendment speech is constitutionally problematic. We're expressly, intentionally accepting it from these regulations, which are about art, which sometimes can intersect with expressive First Amendment speech, but of course doesn't always, is sometimes just an interesting clothesline, clip or something like that. So really that's the key. The flip side of that is the not convert any public property into a forum for protected speech. So then that phrase is protective of spaces like work areas within the city. So there's a vast number of public-owned space that is open for expressive speech. Our parks, our sidewalks, the front entry area of City Hall, but not the city manager's office, not the finance department where work is being done. Those are not public forum. But those areas might benefit from public art. So to the extent those areas do have a portrait or a bust of some, of Randall or whoever, that it doesn't open it up to other forms of expressive speech is kind of the two sides of that statement.
Councilmember Klinger.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Pippinger, could you recite the process of the Art Council and the Parks and Waterways and the council?
Sure.
Okay.
So an applicant will come forth and submit an application, and that will go typically through the Public Arts Council. The Public Arts Council will review that application with the applicant, and them knowing the ordinance very well, they'll be able to direct the artist to what is proper. Perhaps what they're bringing forth is a perfect example of a public art piece. Once they feel comfortable with it, they will bring that application to the Community Services Department. At that point, we will take it and we'll make a decision if it needs to go to Waterways and Parks Commission for recommendation for approval. Once it goes through that process, it will then come to City Council for final approval.
So if I understand this correctly, in order for us to approve any piece of public art, it has to be basically approved by the Art Council, Public Services, and the Waterways and Parks, or we're not going to see it. Is that correct?
No, I wouldn't say that would be the case. If someone feels strongly enough that they want to bring it to council, we'd bring it to council. It doesn't, I mean, there may be some items that don't get approved through the Waterways and Parks Commission that we'd still bring it to council for their approval, but we would let you know that the Waterways and Parks did not recommend it.
Very good. Thank you.
Councilmember Zhang.
Thank you. So this is a new group of arts coming to town, correct? Not the one that I know we said Sunny Eau Claire, which is from different group. Or that
The Public Arts Council, it is new, they were I'm sorry?
so these are the new group that will be coming in, correct? The arts are the new. So this hasn't been placed in Eau Claire. They were talking about coming to Eau Claire, correct?
No, are you referring to the Public Arts Council?
Oh, I would talk about all these arts.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
these could be certainly many different forms of art, public art that folks want to bring to the city of Eau Claire and utilize the canvas of the city for putting some public art into our parks, could be in some of our buildings. Any public space is really available as long as it isn't on that list of restrictions that we talked before about the location restrictions.
Can I second question? I know you mentioned something with 3 years. Is it 3 years for that art will be remain there for 3 years, and then they will move to a different location, or just 3 year for a contract? Or
Well, typically, we wouldn't, if they wanted to look at a different location, we'd bring it back to council and move it, but typically, if they're going to put a art piece in a location, it would typically stay in that location. It would be, after 3 years, the artists in the Public Arts Council could submit another application to have an additional 3 years, up to how many years it would be in there. Again, we put that on for the 3 years because if certain art pieces start looking pretty shabby, we have the ability to review that and say, we're going to have to freshen that up a little bit. And we have that ability in the ordinance to do that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Strobel.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Pittenger, one thing in here, I was reading, at least on first blush, it seemed like a conflict. I'm sure it's probably not, but under number 2B, it says permitted on masonry or natural stone surfaces through the application of paint or other materials. So in other words, you're not going to allow masonry or natural stone surfaces to be painted on buildings. Oh, is it 1B? I'm sorry. 1B. Okay. So that, and then under 2B, I believe it says, public art is intended for the application on the side of a building. 2A shall consist of either chalk or paint as necessary.
We're talking murals versus something that would be on a side of a wall or on concrete or something like that. That 2 refers to a mural being placed on some type of surface. One refers to location restrictions.
Okay, I guess I just saw that if it was going to be put on the side of a building, whether it's a mural or not, it says it should be painted. So, okay. That's all I have.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Thank you. One terrific project would be to paint faces or other things on all of the manhole covers in the city. And I've seen that, not all of them, but some. So if that were to happen, does that still go to Waterways? Or are they going to just, are they the clearinghouse for everything public art that's public art?
No, only if it refers to a waterway or the parks. If it's on a building or, in this case, I think you're talking about a right-of-way. If it was something within a right-of-way, this does not include the right-of-way. We do have a temporary encroachment ordinance that would handle that. So it would be something completely different than just dealing with the right-of-way.
Okay. I think we're at the end of our questions. Thank you for bringing that forward. Are there any members of the public who came tonight to speak? Sure.
Hi, Doug Skapiak, 5531 Shorewood Heights Parkway, Eau Claire. I just heard, and I need clarification because I may have misinterpreted or misheard. Is there, and I could maybe address this to the presenter, did I hear there is a 10-foot setback artwork from the curb of a sidewalk? Did I hear that incorrectly?
We can ask Mr. Pippinger
Yes.
to clarify, as he knows the ordinance better than we do.
Yes, that's correct. A 10-foot setback.
Well, then what happens to the artwork that's presented each year in Eau Claire where the artwork downtown is right on the curb?
The sculpture tour.
Sculpture tour. How does that affect?
Again, that's where I was talking about the right-of-way with the temporary encroachment that we have. They actually have a temporary encroachment into the right-of-way for the sculpture tour.
Does that mean the sculpture tour cannot continue as present? No.
No.
It can be where it is. Okay, good. My second question, what about the placement of Nessie? Is that a water work that's public or private? Can Nessie continue in a water place someplace?
Mr. Pippinger, I forget where Nessie ended up. In Half Moon?
Nessie's in a body of water at a golf course, I believe.
On a golf course? Hickory Hills
Is
Golf
that
Course.
okay?
If I recall, the DNR actually made that piece of artwork removed from the waterway because that was in the Chippewa River and that's under the purview of the Department of Natural Resources.
So according to the new procedure, if adopted, Nessie can't exist any place in any water around Eau Claire, Chippewa Falls.
Well, if she's on private property right now, I think she could remain.
Okay.
She could remain where she is.
Okay. Save Nessie. Yes, thank you.
Yes. Oh. Anyone else here to speak about public art? Okay. Seeing none, the chair will close item 1 and bring our attention to item 2 of our public hearing is a hearing on an ordinance rezoning property located east of Jeffers Road and west of the Northwest Community Park from R1A to R2P, residential 2P, and to adopt a general development plan. Mr. Tufti.
This is the property. It's located on the east side of Jeffers Road, north of the North Crossing, and this is the Northwest Community Park shown in green. Again, the property shown in yellow. There's a duplex project under construction to the north. This is the greenhouse facility, mini warehouses. There's a power line corridor running along the east side of the property. This is a single-family subdivision. This is our community park. There's vacant land to the south. There's a few single-family homes and then vacant land also to the east. This is the preliminary plat for the project. It shows the layout of the streets and 57 lots. 2 of those lots are proposed for existing single-family homes. The remaining 55 lots are proposed for duplex development. The comprehensive plan identifies this area as being appropriate for low-density residential development. The proposed R2 zoning and duplex development is considered low-density residential development by the definitions in the comprehensive plan text. In terms of the street layout of the property, it is consistent with the master plan for street layout that was reviewed by Plan Commission about 20 years ago, and I included that in your packet. This was done about the time the apartments way down on the south end of Jeffers Road were under construction. It looked at a layout of streets within that area. It showed connectivity to the Shorewood Heights area, which at that time hadn't even been platted. And it showed the main entrance to the the Northwest Community Park coming off of Jeffers Road. A master plan was also done in 2008 for the Northwest Community Park, again showing its main access coming off of Jeffers Road into the community park, and then the connectivity to the Shorewood Heights development to the north, which at that time had been platted. And you can see the street layout for that area at that time. The preliminary plat for this project basically provides the main access into the Northwest Community Park on Daisy Lane. It provides a secondary access in the project, provides that connectivity through to Shorewood Heights, and then allows the connection of this development to the vacant land and future development further to the south. It was noted by the Plan Commission, and city engineers stated that most of the traffic from this development is expected to go to Jeffers Road and then either south into the city or to the north. It's expected very little of the traffic from this development will go over into the Shorewood Heights area simply because it's away from the city. It was also stated by the city engineer at the Plan Commission hearing that the Jeffers Road is planned for city improvements in 2020. That would be curb, gutter, sidewalk, and a pathway along one side of the roadway. Waterways and Parks Commission reviewed this project and recommended approval with condition that Daisy Lane provide appropriate right-of-way for a pathway on one side of it to the community park. And that is addressed in the conditions for the preliminary plat as approved by Plan Commission. The Plan Commission has recommended approval of this rezoning, and the preliminary plat was approved by the Plan Commission with the conditions noted in your report. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Von Hayden.
Darrell, the question that I have relates to the Shorewood Heights Parkway. Is there any reason that has to be in there? Because the residents from that area have a concern with that potentially adding additional traffic into their neighborhood. I realize the way it's laid out, it may go out Jeffers Road, but it could. Why is that road in there?
It's important that subdivisions have secondary points of access, particularly for emergency vehicle accessibility, say during an emergency, if Shorewood Heights were to be blocked, or during road construction, if we're replacing utility mains on Shorewood Heights to provide an alternative means to get to the neighborhood. It's important in terms of neighborhood connectivity and interaction. It's important in terms of school bus, post office, delivery service, to have alternate ways in which to get in and out of a subdivision. Our comprehensive plan calls for connectivity among neighborhoods and subdivisions.
Okay. The second question relates to, there was some concern that by putting that in, it would have an impact on the community park, take away woodlands or something like this. Could you explain that to me? What has to happen to put that in, and what impact this has on the community park?
At this time, the public right-of-way coming out of Shorewood Heights Parkway is stubbed to the north end of our community park at this location. And there's a temporary cul-de-sac that is right now in place. It's about like that. And it's actually in the community park. The plan here shows it to quickly come into the park and turn then to the west and link into then a street that would be built with this project immediately to the west. So it would impact a small corner of the park. The more significant improvements that are envisioned for the park come off of Daisy Lane with the idea of, oops, again, Daisy Lane coming into the park and a parking lot with pavilion and restrooms and things like that being at the end of Daisy Lane as the main entrance into the park.
And as I understand it, those improvements were something that were set up a long time ago, and we were just waiting to get an access road into that community park.
Yes, there has not been that main access road. We've had this stub street to the north. We have a stub street down on the south end on Ken Van Ness Parkway. Wells Road has been stubbed in over here. They have plans for small parking lots in those locations, but the main access in the park has always been off of Jeffers Road in terms of the planning.
And as I understand from looking at that, it may have some impact on the trails that are in the park, but it doesn't affect them significantly?
Again, the idea would be to design the parking lot to minimize your impact on the trails as is appropriate.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember T-Wall.
Thank you, Council President. If you could remind me, what are the parking requirements for duplexes built?
2 stalls per unit, it'd be 4 stalls per building.
4 stalls per building. And do you know what occupancy would be planned for duplexes? Is 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4?
Applicant stated at the Plan Commission hearing he expected empty nesters, folks like me, would be one potential user, and then younger folks moving into the community that have jobs. He didn't expect there to be a lot of families, but it is a market rate type housing product that he provides, so there could be some families that moved in here.
Yeah. My concern is there was similar duplex development over on the north side a few years back, and parking was not anticipated. Maybe four singles or whatever rent together, keep the cost down, and now you've got 4 cars on one side, 4 on the other, so the street, like on Zephyr, filled up with cars and snow handling. So I was just curious what that is. That looks like a large density of duplexes.
This zoning here does limit the unrelated to 3, where that area on the north side allowed 4 unrelated because of the zoning of the property, if it's the one that I'm thinking of.
Okay.
So there's only 3 unrelated allowed here, but you could talk to applicant. I don't expect you to see that type of housing this far away from the university. Not that it couldn't happen, but I don't think you expect to see that.
Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And any further questions? I see none. Thank you. Now, if there are members of the public who came to speak to this item, you can approach the podium one at a time and tell us what's on your mind.
Thank you, Council President. Good evening. My name is Dan Adams. I live at 5531 Benjamin Street. As a long-term resident of Eau Claire's North Side and a current resident of Sherwood Heights Development, I was disappointed last week when the C&M developer claimed the proposed area was not in the most desired location. In his comments, he referred to the greenhouses north of the property as a factory and stated there was a high density directly south when in fact there would be a substantial vacant land that would separate the 2 developments. I feel these reasons are not legitimate reasons to rezone the proposed location. The Sherwood Heights development along with Steffi Road are 2 great examples that the proposed area can be developed and sold as R1. Due to the desired location in Sherwood Heights, we currently have no houses for sale and all are occupied. Excuse me. I believe by developing the east side of Jeffers Road as single-family homes, This would bring value and progress to Eau Claire's north side. We already have seen great potential due to the development of the Jefford Rose Park. For these reasons, I ask the council to please oppose the rezoning of the proposed area. If this council does in fact vote to rezone the proposed location, the residents of Sherwood Heights ask that the thoroughfare that connects Sherwood Heights Parkway and Willow Lane not be constructed. The developments at Steffi Road, the single-family homes in Aspen Ridge, and the New Claire Estates in Princeton Valley have only one outlet similar to Sherwood Heights. Thank you. If this thoroughfare is constructed to an R2 development, we will not only see a decrease in the value of our homes in Sherwood Heights, but more importantly, a danger to our children and residents due to the increased volume of traffic. Thank you. Sorry about that.
We'll let you catch your breath a little bit.
Thank you.
You would be welcome to come back up to the podium, though I don't often allow that, but you're obviously having some problems.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I could take questions. I'm good.
We'll just give you a chance to catch your
Okay.
breath a little bit.
All right, sounds good.
And the chair calls Mr. Philipsek next to the podium. Just be with you in just a minute.
Good evening, Cody Philipsak, C&M Properties, 9305 Murphy Lane, Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I think this is a very good development. I'm very excited about it. I am the developer, if you guys don't know. They're actually going to be twin homes is what we're planning to sell each unit. Twin homes have been very popular. We started building them back in the mid-2000s and have sold over 180 units since 2011 all around the Chippewa Valley. We have 4 plan styles, and we're able to provide an affordable house, yet high-quality product. We do things like custom cabinets, custom trim work, carriage-style garage doors. They're extremely energy efficient, some of the top make the top 10% in the state of Wisconsin, and a lot of other quality finishes all under $200,000. So it's providing a whole nother type of housing. You know, I was in here a few weeks ago for the LaSalle project. That one's single family. It's a whole different market. Or just another type of housing. And then like Darryl said, a lot of different demographics. The biggest is the empty nesters that are moving in from the country, and they're, you know, most of them are coming in and buying way before we even start the foundation, upgrading a lot of things, doing really nice finishes on them. But also a lot of young professionals, because it is very hard to find quality housing at or under $200,000. It's nearly impossible on a single family home. And Eau Claire needs more of that. I believe every community should have all different levels of housing, and this provides that. I do think this is a perfect location. When I said that last week, I didn't mean this is a poor location. Obviously, I wouldn't be interested in this if I thought it was a bad location. I just don't think it's the right location for single families, and it does have, you know, whether you call it a greenhouse factory or whatever, right to the north. It has a major road right to the west, and it does have high-density multifamily just a little ways to the south. So I think a twin home development is the perfect location. It does fit the comp plan. It'll add around $19 million to the tax base, provide the 2 access points from Jeffers to the Northwest Park. And one of those access points, we're going to put a bike trail into the park. I've actually been talking to Jay with the Chippewa Valley Off-Road Bike Association, and will help with the cost of putting a temporary trailhead and parking lot, because he said that's a huge issue for people trying to go in there, is there's nowhere to park, and it would obviously be a benefit to us too, for the people in the neighborhood to be able to use that park. So I think it would be a fair trade. But the biggest thing, we'll build a beautiful development. We do a lot of extra landscaping around the house. We've always put trees all around everything. We have very strong covenants. Like I said earlier, a lot of people come in and do a lot of different upgrades, add sunrooms, a lot of extra patios, stuff like that. If I would invite anyone here to go through our development that we finished last year by the Eau Claire Country Club, and you will see, speaking of traffic, to drive through there, you will see very little amount of cars parked in the road. I mean, there's a lot of times there are no cars parked there, because a lot of the ones that are buying this is just a young couple, or like I said, empty nesters that have just one or two vehicles. There aren't very many families buying these. So I hope I have your support. We'll make sure we build a beautiful development, and appreciate your time. Any questions for me?
Councilmember Von Hayden has a question.
Just on the twin home, just for a definition, how many bedrooms are normally in a unit?
We have 4 different styles. Most of them are 2 bedrooms upstairs, and then if people finish the basement, they put 1 down. If it's a slab, then it's just the 2. Or we have another style that's a split level, and that's a 3-bedroom.
Okay, so they're basically a limited number of bedrooms.
Yes.
And then when they say twin home, there's 2 of them side by side then, right?
Correct. Yep. It's basically, twin homes are 2 single-family houses attached.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Zoning and everything is the same. The way you sell it, all of that. That's where, like, a condo has gotten impossible to sell with all the federal regulations and stuff. So that's where twin homes came out, where it is just 2 houses put together. So as far as like the financing, when people go in to finance it, they finance it the same way as a single family. And we have very strict party wall agreements between the 2 unit owners. You don't have to do that, but it obviously is going to be a good idea for down the road, and deals with what they do with the roof repair, any type of repairs, all the restrictions between the units, everything like that.
Councilmember T-Walt.
Thank you. And I don't know if you're the right person or Mr. Tufty, but are these type of homes suitable for an investor to buy as rentals? And is that within this zoning?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's within the zoning. I think it would be, because it's a similar type zoning, but it would be unlikely. I'm not going to say it isn't going to happen. In our Altoona development, I believe we had around, between the 2 phases, over 100 units. And I know of 1 or 2 units that someone bought. We do have language, and we allow people, they can buy the whole building and rent out one side. Maybe their parent lives on the other side, or different things. I've only seen one person ever buy one, and that was a secondary sale. But when you're buying a unit for $180,000, it's going to be hard to rent it for $1,300, $1,400 a month and make any money.
Thank you.
And I see no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
Thank you.
Mr. Adams, did you want to finish your statement, or?
I actually was finished, so.
Okay. Did anyone have questions for Mr. Adams? I sort of cut you off, but you seem to have stopped coughing, so that's good. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Adams, and I reside at 5531 Benjamin Street. Last week, I shared with the Plan Commission the concerns of our neighborhood regarding the proposed access road that would connect Shorewood Heights Parkway and Willow Lane. As you know from the meeting packet in front of you, we have collected 81 signatures of residents that are opposed to this access road, and that starts on page 30 of your packet. Connecting this proposed duplex development to Shorewood Heights would unnecessarily increase traffic and danger within our neighborhood, as well as lowering our home values. Recently, the Plan Commission and the City Council approved rezoning and a plat for Highclere Estates, which will be located on the north side of Eau Claire in Princeton Valley. This development will consist of 70 single-family homes with one access road. During last week's meeting, members of the Plan Commission expressed the need for a second access road into Shorewood Heights via the Camden Place development. Let me remind you that Shorewood Heights has 52 single-family homes and has been safely and peacefully operating with one access road for almost 10 years. At the July 31st Plan Commission meeting, when Highclere Estates was presented, Chairperson Brenhold asked Mr. Tufte if there were any concerns about congestion with only one access point for the 70 single-family homes in Highclere Estates. Mr. Tufte responded by saying there were no concerns because the development would be single-family homes. I asked you to consider this when making your decision. As a city, I believe we need to remain consistent in our message to residents. Thank you.
Questions for Ms. Adams? I see none. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Julie Newhouse, and I reside at 5302 Shorewood Heights Parkway. I am opposed to the property being zoned R2, and additionally also opposed to the through road from the new development connecting to Shorewood Heights Parkway. Reasons for opposing the R2 zoning relate to the increased populations which would be living off of Jeffers Road. The road simply cannot accommodate further traffic. If we talk about 55 parcels with 110 units, that's 220 vehicles per unit. Pedestrian and bike travel on Jeffers Road is already dangerous and sometimes not even possible since there is not a sidewalk or a bike path. Additionally, the areas surrounding Jeffers Road are already heavily populated with multifamily housing. Those areas of multifamily housing already include Country Meadows, the neighborhoods on Glen, Grissom, Hagman Streets, as well as Aspen Meadows and the recently new development of duplexes built by Wurzer Construction. If the city wishes to create diverse neighborhoods with a variety of housing options, it's now time for single-family homes in our area because it's already become saturated with multi-family housing in about a half-mile radius. So again, this doubles the population by zoning it R2 instead of R1. I realize there are future plans for the Jeffers Road to be widened, but that will not be in time to support the populations of the proposed multifamily homes. My next concern is regardless of the zoning outcome, R1 or R2, our entire neighborhood is against the proposed through road that would be connecting Shorewood Heights Parkway to Willow Lane of this development. Our neighborhood asks, what is the purpose of the through road? Documents state that Daisy Lane is to be the main access to the park. Then why is connecting Willow to Shorewood Heights so important? I'm not opposed to Shorewood Heights Parkway being used as an access to the Northwestern Community Park, but what I am opposed to is that Shorewood Heights Parkway should not be used as an access to Camden Place housing development. I believe it's important for the council to ensure that Camden Place development can be built without having to destroy parts of the Northwest Community Park for purposes of perhaps water, sewer, or utility access. If that is the true purpose of the through road for water, sewer, or utility access, rather than for emergency vehicle access, we request that the city pause and ask further questions before proceeding to vote. We have been told that emergency vehicle access is one of the reasons for the through road, but I don't believe that that is the truthful major purpose for access to Shorewood Heights Parkway. I have many questions that are not easily answered in this setting. I do ask the council to be certain of the family estate which provided the park property to the city of Eau Claire, which has now become the Northwest Community Park. I believe it would be a violation of the family estate agreement to use the park property for purposes of access to water, sewer, or utilities for a housing development. As Ashley stated, we now have went from 81 to 84 signatures on the petition given to the council tonight, stating that we are against a through road. And last week, we had approximately 20 residents attend the Planning Commission meeting. Not one of our neighborhood members has expressed a desire for a through road to be created for our neighborhood. 100% of Shorewood Heights neighbors are against the through road. We have over 20 neighbors here tonight attending this meeting, but we have many others who wish to do so, but they were unable to do so. They are out of state or they have other commitments. The last 2 Monday nights, my husband and I paid babysitters to attend these meetings, and we don't get babysitters often. The council needs to understand that not everyone is able to attend the meeting who has concerns. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Newhouse. I see no questions for you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Sean Bohan, 1105 Elm Avenue West, Menominee. I'm the engineer that's working with the developer. Just wanted to touch on a few things. I know questions have been brought up about a couple of subdivisions in the Eau Claire area where there's only one access that was provided into them, one of them being Highclere Estates, the other Aspen Meadows. On both of those, we do end up taking the right-of-way to the property line. We do end up having a temporary cul-de-sac for future access. So when something like this comes up, that they do have that connectivity. Aspen Meadows ends up having one to the north and also ends up having one to the west. The development hasn't happened yet, further to the west and stuff, so that's where they think that that it's actually a closed one access point into it. Just want to touch on a couple of things. We did, the developer and myself sat down with city staff a number of different times and went over different designs and stuff that they would end up liking to see. We weren't aware at the time the access that was going to go to the park. So we had a couple of iterations for this development to make sure that we were providing for not only the comp plan, but the master plan that was done a number of years ago. We tried to end up following that as closely as we could. We provided the different access locations to the south. We also provide the one to the east into the park, and then the 2 access points off of Jeffers Road that we're providing for the subdivision, and yes, that we're making that connectivity and stuff to the Shorewood Heights Boulevard. But everything is following the comp plan. I mean, the Shorewood Heights Boulevard was platted, to the end with a temporary cul-de-sac. It was known at that time, it didn't end in a cul-de-sac. You didn't end up having houses that came off that cul-de-sac for the reason that it was going to end up being extended for a secondary access. That was done by Planning Commission, approved by council a number of years ago. I don't believe that it's a huge deal to Cody whether that road goes through, because he's having to pay for 300 and something feet of a road. But we do end up having utilities and stuff that'll be coming through that actually serves that whole area. That was the plan for it. There's a lift station that's down, I believe that's in the park, that the sanitary that is going to provide everything for this area. It was put in, it was master planned, and it's just something that we're going through and following with the master plan. I guess with that, if anybody ends up having any questions.
Questions for Mr. Bohan? Councilmember Von Hayden?
You brought up the sewer and water. Are you saying that to get sewer and water connectivity to this, it has to come through Shorewood Heights or the community park? It's not coming off Jeffers Road?
You're going to end up having a looping that'll come off of Jeffers Road for your water main. So the whole system will end up looping to strengthen the utilities and the water in the area. As far as sanitary sewer, you're going to have some of it coming off of Jeffers Road, and you'll have some coming up on Shorewood as planned for this area.
Okay, thank you.
And I see no further questions. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for your clarifications. Anyone else?
Hi again, Doug Skapiak, 5531 Shorewood Heights Parkway. a lot of us moved into our neighborhood because we liked the compactness, the in and out without a lot of stranger traffic coming in and out. That's why I rise in opposition to having Shorewood Heights Parkway connect with Willow through the new subdivision. Let me ask about utilities coming into the new subdivision. Where would the access points be? Are there two? Did I just hear two access points? One at the end of Shorewood Heights Parkway and one from the south? Is that correct?
I believe that's what we heard too, Sue.
Okay.
And your question?
Talk about taking my thunder, thank you. Is it true that any development of utilities through that woods is prohibited?
That question has been raised, alluded to tonight also.
Yes.
By another
Has
speaker.
there been any research done?
I'm not sure of the answer right now. I don't know if Mr. Tufty is prepared. Perhaps if we just talk about our utility master plan would be helpful.
I'm not aware of any restrictions. Utilities are looked at when the final plat for the project comes in. I know the master plan has always been to extend utilities for a portion of this property and the vacant land to the south from that Shorewood Heights stubbed road going into that north end of our park. That's where the utilities are deep enough, particularly the sanitary sewer, to provide that service. The utilities out in Jeffers Road are not deep enough to provide service for all this area simply because the land starts falling off or gets lower as you head to the east. The water main has always been intended to be extended from the south end of Shorewood Heights Road simply because it loops the system and provides redundancy of our service, which is important for water in terms of long-term maintenance.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Perhaps the cart was put before the horse in that stance then. If there wasn't proper water main access from Jeffers Road, they thought they'd access it through Shorewood Heights Parkway. Well, let me present this. If you have to cut through the woods for utilities, what would present future development of part of that woods for utility development for other reasons, through other corners of the property? What are you going to do when that comes up? So I rise in opposition to continuing the road. That's my main concern, paving over a part of the woods just to connect to Willow. If you want to do utilities through the end of the cul-de-sac into that new subdivision, maybe I can live with that. But don't pave over the top of it and make a road. We like our little subdivision, we're all happy, and we petitioned against this. So thank you for hearing me.
Hi, my name is Joan Radke. I live at 5613 Shorewood Heights Parkway. And I think I've emailed a couple of you, and I thank you for your responses in the last couple of days. I appreciate that you're listening to us. I'm an empty nester. I'm an old professional. I am now retired. My husband and I lived most of our life in Minneapolis. We chose to move to Eau Claire when we retired about 18 months ago to be closer to our children. I have to tell you, there were many times when we wondered about our decision to move to this city. We could not find any single-family housing in the price range of, $220 to $320 that was livable and that worked for us. I am what the developer talks, I'm an empty nester. There is no way we even looked at any single duplex, twin home, whatever you want to call it. That was not what our need was. This town needs decent single-family housing. I can't tell you some of the houses we looked at in all over town. We didn't know northwest, east, south when we came here 18 months ago. When we found Shorewood Heights, we were ecstatic. It was like, wow, here's this nice, quiet neighborhood, well-kept, mixture of old retired people in our neighborhood, and there's young people in our neighborhood. Perfect spot. That's what this town needs more of. And I don't know how, where you all live, but for us coming in as outsiders, we almost said we can't even move here because there is no house that we like in our price range that was decent enough for us to live in. And I think the city of Eau Claire and all of you really need to think about that, which is why I am totally opposed to building duplexes, twin homes, if you want to make it sound a little bit better, in that area so close to us, because I truly believe that with some nice planning of single family, they'll sell, and they'll sell quickly. Questions?
I see no questions.
Thank you.
Mhm. Are there other people who would like to speak to this item?
Barrett Newhouse, 5302 Shorewood Heights Parkway. Being that the neighborhood of Shorewood Heights is without a doubt against this road going through our development, and the Planning Commission forcing it on us due to it being deemed necessary to have a second entrance for safety purposes, is it a possibility to, okay, if they're going to put this road in, can they get their utilities and pave over the top of it, but do it in a minimal way? And and per the Planning Commission statement, there won't be any increase in traffic, there shouldn't be a need for a sidewalk or anything like that that can kind of help keep the road narrow. And if there isn't going to be any traffic, is it another possibility to actually put like a swing bar type gate on it to have it be a limited use? If you need to do repairs to Shorewood Drive, open up the gate, we can get out that way. Are these some things that are even possibilities, or if you're going to put a road in, it's just automatically going to have a sidewalk on each side, or how are you going to determine how wide that road is? And where my wife and I live, she spoke earlier, this road will impact us the most. We live right on the corner, right at the end of the cul-de-sac there. And when we bought our house, we bought it because mainly the lot adjoins this awesome park, and we didn't want to buy a lot that's going to turn into more or less a corner lot next to a 110-unit duplex development. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Newhouse. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this item? Anyone else? Seeing none, then the chair will close. Item 2, we do have a decision point, as I mentioned, tomorrow at our legislative session, which convenes at 4 p.m. in this room, in these chambers. The third item on our agenda tonight is another public hearing, this one on a resolution to approve a site plan in a P Public District for a new fire station on Malden Avenue. Mr. Tufti.
This is the property. It's located on the west side of Malden Avenue, north of Birch. And again, this is the property. There are single-family homes to the west, vacant land to the north, single-family homes and a church to the east, and vacant land to the south. And this is the site plan for the project. It shows the proposed fire station with entrance off of Malden. You circle around to the back of the building with the fire trucks, enter in the back, exit out the front of the fire station, employee and visitor parking to the north and front of the fire station. It's a floor plan showing a full 5-bay fire station. The building elevations, back and front of the building, and what we call the pretty picture, depicting what it'll look like. The pretty picture. It's a planning term. Council approved the P-Public zoning with a general development plan for the property that showed 3 options for a fire station. We did attach that report in your packet. This is the northern option for the proposed site plan. It's based on the cost for soil remediation when compared to the other sites, and we place those estimates also within your packet. This is a 14,373 square foot fire station. It has 22 parking stalls for visitors and employees. It does have a 52-foot wide curb cut going out to Malden Drive, and that has been approved by the Plan Commission as required by code. Council doesn't see site plans, so you'll hear a little different presentation. They have a 4-stall bike rack. They need to provide a pedestrian link from the sidewalks in front of the building out to Malden Avenue. They provide their street trees, front foundation planting, some rear shade trees. We are recommending, or the Plan Commission has recommended, they provide a screen on the back of this pavement area for that fire truck access in relation to the single-family homes to the west. Plan Commission has recommended a low screen for this front parking lot because of the single-family homes across the street to the east. They note a trash enclosure that needs to be a 6-foot high screen. Their exterior lighting will meet city standards. Their mechanical equipment is screened, and this is a full brick building. Site grading and drainage and other city services are also reviewed in the report. There's a draft letter which recommended by the Plan Commission approval of this project with conditions. It notes that the Plan Commission has already approved that wider curb cut, that 4 copies of a revised site plan be provided showing the pedestrian link, that screening along the west lot line, that low screen for the parking lot in the front yard, that their dumpster be a 6-foot high screen, and we need engineering approval of drainage. Are there any questions?
Questions?
That's a Plan Commission presentation.
Questions, anyone? Well, I just have a question about what, so the placement that we chose to, so we don't spend $300,000 on fixing up some soil, moves the fire station further into a neighborhood. Do we have experience with fire stations across from homes, and how do we think that's going to go?
I'm trying to think. Oakwood Hills, I think, has a residence to the east. I think there's commercial around the rest of it. The station off of Claremont has a fire station to the south, or a home across the street to the south. So there are some other stations with proximity to single-family homes. They're relatively quiet use, other than when fire trucks leave, and they necessarily can be quiet and turn their sirens on when they get out to the arterial street is one way to solve that noise issue. So.
And I know, I mean, lots of thought has been, put into the whole project, and we're all comfortable that the fire station is ending up where it belongs for the right reasons, and it's going to work great. What'd you say?
The comment made at the Plan Commission meeting by me was, I think the south side would provide better development for the neighborhood, and you have to off-weigh that then with the added cost.
Yeah.
And that's a good council decision to make. So.
I see. And it helps us tomorrow when we're talking and thinking to get as much background as we can. So
sure.
Thank you for that. You do render a valued opinion, so I thank you for that. Did that inspire other questions? Councilmember Strobel.
In fact, it did inspire other questions. Thank you. No. Mr. Tufte, when we originally talked about the building, it's been some time now. The size of this proposed structure versus the size of the old fire station, how did that end up? Do you know the answer to that question?
The fire chief stated at the Plan Commission meeting they're similar in size, although the old one, I believe, is double-decked in terms of the bays. And if he's here tonight, I haven't turned around to look, he'd be the better person to ask that question of. Fire chief. The deputy fire chief is here. I'd ask that question of the deputy fire chief. They're size of the two facilities and how they relate.
I could do that.
If you wouldn't mind coming forward, please forgive me for not, I don't know if I called you the proper title.
No, it's all right. I just got promoted.
Yeah.
Joe Kelly, Battalion Chief with the Fire Department.
Battalion Chief,
Yep.
okay, I apologize.
That's all right. So in regards to your question, actually, the current station, Station 10, is, the apparatus floor is 2 levels. You got basement and an upstairs of 3 bays each. They're not as deep as the proposed station, but it's a similar in size. There's not going to be nearly as much storage in this new station as there is in the old station, just because of the way it's designed. We now utilize the space a little better instead of just having empty storerooms that we pile things in. You know, this will have a lot of well-designed and thought-out storage space, but with a purpose versus just filling it with stuff.
So if I could ask a follow-up. So the old station has 3 bays. The new station is, are we down to 3 bays? Or I thought we talked about 5.
It is 3 bays with 2 bays that are alternate. And if we do go with just the 3 bays, we will be building a smaller station than what we're currently working out of. It's just the way it is.
And so the benefit to us then, we talked about response times, I think, as well, maybe as one of the benefits here. And then I read in the paper that response times are slightly slower with the location that you're putting it on. How does that work out, the response times, the old station versus the new station? I'm trying to where we're gaining here.
It depends on where you're responding to. So out of the current station at Birch and Hastings, if you were going to be going over to the East Hill side, this will be a little bit slower delayed. But if we're going to the south side, which that station's ambulance provides service, we jump on the bypass and we're able to get down to the Walmart Target area much faster than the other stations, we'll be decreasing the response times to that area. Also, we backfill stations when there is an emergency and Station 5 is out on calls. This will be able to get to the other parts of the south side quicker as a second due-in units. So you give and take a little bit with some of the response times. It's not going to be a dramatic decrease or increase either way. There was response research done a few years ago, and this was in a recommended location for the expansion of the city, the services we provide into other communities also. But mostly it's set up for the best access to provide Eau Claire, the city.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Thank you. If the bids come in such that you can only build 3 bays,
Mm-hmm.
then can 1 or 2 be added at a later date?
They could, and that'd be something maybe to talk with the finance department, but with Jay. But I don't think it'd be a recommendation. You know, it's cheaper to build it now than in the future. If you build 3 bays now, in 20 years you want to put on 2 more bays, that's just going to be the increased cost. So it's better to take care of it now than in the future. More economical.
Yeah, I understand that. I was asking in terms of the structure of the building.
Mm-hmm.
Is it set up so that you can easily add 2 bays, regardless of the cost?
You could. As you can see by the location on that, I don't know how to point to it here.
Right over there.
Okay, here we go. Currently, right here would be about the cutoff for this drawing represents 5 bays. But if this one might be easier, and it is located like this. So as you can see, this dotted line represents the alternate bids. So the bid is this with the alternates of these 2 bays. There would be a wall obviously here and in the future if you wanted to go through and add it on. You would just have the construction costs of breaking down, walls and adding on. There will be the room for it. And either way, we will be keeping the driveway going around to the back side where it is. Okay, here I guess you can see this is the alternate right here.
I did, but Councilmember Mitchell asked the one question, but I'll just ask one more. So the rest of the building would remain the same though, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
The living quarters and basically this is all going to stay the same no matter what. It's just these two bays here would be the additional bays.
Okay. And then just a follow-up question too, if that's okay. Is there a standard procedure with the sirens? Are they required to turn them on when they leave the firehouse, or would they wait until they get to the intersection, or?
State law requires if emergency vehicle is operating, its emergency lights, the sirens or audible warnings must be also. Now, as you pull out into this area, and there are homes right across here, well, you're not going to be up to a higher rate of speeds. You're going to have to slow down until you get out here. General practice is probably not turning our lights on and sirens on until we get closer to the intersection.
Great.
Pulling out, you're not going to build speed up enough to warrant them anyway.
All right, thank you.
And Councilmember Mitchell?
May I? The driveway that's shown on here is 57 feet, right? So is he correct? Isn't that the black part of this show 5 bays and a 57-foot driveway?
No. This right here is where the 2 additional bays are. This, the white area with the dotted line around it is the 2 alternate bid bays. So current bid, the original bid, I guess, if you would, is just the darkened area with the bays. So as you can see, the driveway would come out and then slope into the original driveway. These bays will not have first responding frontline vehicles working out of it, so there wouldn't need to be a direct access out. So no matter what is done, it'll still just be this size here for the driveway.
Councilmember Stroll.
So we're being asked to approve the black, the three bay structure, or is it a certain dollar amount based on the bids? It could be different.
You have a separate item on the council agenda tomorrow for the site plan and a separate item for the bids. The bids will have the base cost and then an alternate bid for the addition of the 2 bays.
Okay.
Councilmember Clickhammer.
Thank you, Madam President. I have 2 questions. One for the battalion chief. It's my understanding that the current station on Birch is not efficiently operating.
That is correct. It is our most inefficient. It costs most to heat and run that station than any other one.
And this site was chosen because of its access and pretty much the same response time.
Correct.
Okay. And that we are building this as a facility that will allow us to grow with the community as it expands and population increases.
This is correct.
Okay. And the 5-bay plan for 2, what did you call them, alternate bays?
Yes, it's an alternate bid, so, yes.
It's an alternate bid, but for what kind of bays were they? You had a description. Additional bays.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not going to have any equipment in them?
Yes.
At this point?
We have got, as you can see on this drawing, this drawing represents a frontline ambulance, a ladder truck, and a reserve engine. But we have several trailers. This also has got 2 police vehicles that we would store in here. Our brush truck, our plow truck, and a lot of these trucks and trailers, the trailers currently are parked outside of Station 10. And to be honest with you, they are deteriorating because they sit out in the sun and the snow 24 hours a day.
Okay. So what you're saying is we need 5 bays?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. I 100% feel we do.
Is getting a bid for 3 bays with an alternate bid for 2 extra, trying to make the pills go down easier for the council, or, I mean, do you know?
We're trying, with the original 3 bays is what the budget allows us for, and we are trying our best to stay in the budget.
I see.
The 2 additional bays are a necessity, but I don't get to make that decision, you guys get to.
You're not in that pay grade?
No, well, I was a minute ago, I was- but no.
Well, it would just seem to me that the need is there. It's a little bit like a woman being pregnant. She's either pregnant or she isn't. We either need the 5 bays or we don't.
We do need the 5 bays.
Thank you. I guess the other question is for Darrell, or for Mr. Tufti. Tomorrow, when we approve the site plan, we are approving this site on the north end of the property, correct?
Yes.
So the other 2 have been kicked to the curb, so to speak.
They've not been recommended by the Plan Commission. Let's say that. The Plan Commission recommended approval of this site plan, the north site.
Okay. I see. We did that.
Yes.
That's what that vote was, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember T-Wall.
Thank you, Council President. I want to just comment, I think it's a good plan. I think we're seeing evident in the last couple of months the expansion in the northeast quadrant of the city. So this will provide timely access to these new developments that we're going to need, as well as support Southside, as we've heard. And I think as we learned, and we'll discuss it more, but as we did the extra floor in the parking ramp and it filled up in no time, we'll find this of great use and a good investment. So it looks very good. Thank you.
Mr. Peters.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to clarify that tomorrow's business item is simply for the site preparation on the site. The bids and calculating the bids and whether we're able to do the other 2 bays or not will be on a future council agenda.
Sorry, it was on the earlier ones, must have got pulled.
It all helps us, though. And to that end, on the conceptual design options option 1, site option 1 and 2 on page 58 and following, do those cost estimates, are those for 5 bays or 3?
My understanding, all the cost estimates for building are the same. The main difference is the remediation costs for soil at about $300,000. It was explained by the fire chief that the depth of the poor soils is almost doubled, upwards over 20 feet when you get to the south end of the site compared to about 10 feet up on the north end of the site.
Can you tell if the cost estimates on page 58 and following are for 3 bays or 5 bays?
I wouldn't know that. No, I got those numbers from finance just to show the remediation cost differences.
Though I realize it's ancillary to our discussion tomorrow, it might impact where one sees a building fitting the best, perhaps. So,
okay.
Just as some added information as it helps us debate and deliberate. Any other questions? Are there members of the public who came to speak about the fire station site plan? Okay, we'll close that item. We do have a decision point tomorrow on that item. Moving on to, we have 2 public discussions tonight. The first one is a public discussion on a resolution approving the creation of and the project plan for tax incremental district number 12. Mr. Winzens.
Thank you, Council President Kincaid and City Council. This evening, there will be a public discussion concerning the creation of tax incremental district number 12. Tomorrow, we'll be asking that council consider a resolution creating that district and approving the project plan for it. Just by way of background, Wisconsin statutes, Chapter 66, 1105, govern the creation and permit the creation of tax incremental districts within the state of Wisconsin. There are several steps that are required in the process of creating a tax incremental district. We first prepare a project plan. That project plan is reviewed by the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission holds a public hearing on the creation of that tax incremental district. That then comes back to the City Council for, again, approval of the project plan and the creation of the boundaries of the tax incremental district. And lastly, it goes back to the Joint Review Board. And the Joint Review Board is comprised of representatives of the overlying taxing jurisdictions, so Eau Claire County, Eau Claire School District, Chippewa Valley Technical College, and the City of Eau Claire all have representation on the Joint Review Board. And ultimately, the Joint Review Board has to approve the creation of all tax incremental districts. Just a reminder that the project plan is just that. It is a plan. It doesn't commit the City Council to fund any particular project in the plan. It does not make any appropriations. All of the projects in the plan will need to come back to the City Council either through the capital improvement program, in the case of capital improvements, or through the budgeting process in some other cases. Tax increment financing is a mechanism to pay for improvements, and the project plan must include several different items. It needs to include a listing of the proposed public works or improvements to occur within the tax incremental district, an economic feasibility study, a listing of the project costs, and the methods of financing and timing of the project costs. Within Wisconsin statutes, there are 3 different types of tax incremental districts that are authorized. The first of those are industrial tax incremental districts. The second are blight districts. We have several blight districts within the City of Eau Claire, most notably TID number 8 and TID number 10 in the downtown area. And lastly, the statute provides for the creation of mixed-use tax incremental districts. TID number 12 is being proposed as a mixed-use district and would have a maximum life of 20 years. Within the project plan, several objectives of this district are established. First of all is to promote Water Street as a mixed-use district by providing funding for the acquisition of properties along the Chippewa River, construction of a linear park and bike trail, thereby creating new jobs, increased property valuation, and business growth. Secondly, promote the private redevelopment of properties along Water Street to better utilize the riverfront while enhancing public access and amenities, creating better access to the river and to the bike trail along the river. Create a safe, appealing, and vibrant atmosphere which encourages development and redevelopment of mixed-use, commercial, and residential properties within and adjacent to the proposed tax incremental district. Invest in public infrastructure, such as the construction of a parking lot in the 400 block of Chippewa Street to enhance other mixed-use development projects within and adjacent to the TID. Reduce the financial risk to property taxpayers by timing the implementation of the project plan with the creation of additional property value through redevelopment and or new development. What this is saying is that we will time the project costs with the increment coming into the district, thus reducing the risk to property taxpayers. And finally, generate sufficient new property tax increments within 10 to 15 years from each specific development project to fully repay the city's tax incremental district project expenditures. This is a map of the proposed district. The district runs roughly from 2nd Avenue to 8th Avenue, for the most part south of Water Street. It does dip down from Water Street to Menominee Street between the 700 and 800 blocks. Then also does include properties on the north side of Menominee Street, or excuse me, the north side of Water Street, but south of the alley in the 200 and 300 blocks of Water Street. This proposed, the project plan for this district does include language allowing expenditures within 1/2 mile of the boundary of this tax incremental district. This map shows the 1/2 mile area. As you can see, it runs nearly to Claremont Avenue on the south, to Congress Street on the north, takes in a small area of the Third Ward neighborhood, and then runs roughly out to the intersection of Menominee and Claremont Avenue on the west side. Proposed improvements within Tax Incremental District Number 12 and timing includes reconstruction of the bike trail along the river, including retaining walls, lighting, landscaping, and possibly the creation of overlooks at 3rd, 4th, and 5th Avenues where they would run into the river. That is planned for 2019, but again, the timing will depend upon the development occurring within the district. Between 2019 and 2031, we're anticipating providing $2 million for a neighborhood revitalization program. The specifics of that program have not yet been determined. Our intent is to work with the historic Randall Park neighborhood and the redevelopment corporation that they've created, and perhaps other parties, in developing what those programs will ultimately be, because we want them to be of benefit to the neighborhood. We have met with the neighborhood on 2 occasions to discuss the creation of this district and these neighborhood revitalization programs, and you may hear from representatives of the neighborhood later during the public comment period. From 2021 to 2024, within that time frame, we expect to extend the existing public parking lot that's located at the corner of Chippewa and 4th Streets, extend that to the west by acquiring properties, ultimately demolishing those properties and paving the parking lot, including lighting and landscaping. I should point out that this is a project that has been contemplated in both the historic Randall Park neighborhood plan as well as our comprehensive plan for quite some time, and I did not hear any objections from the neighborhood to the expansion of that parking lot. In 2024 through 2030, depending upon the availability and the interest of property owners in selling, we would like to acquire the remaining residential properties that front on the Chippewa River on Menominee Street, so that we can ultimately relocate the bike trail to run along the Chippewa River for its entirety. Right now, the bike trail, or the pedestrian trail, jogs onto Menominee Street, runs along Menominee Street for a block, and then back onto the river. Our intent is to acquire those properties voluntarily as property owners express interest in selling. And lastly, in the final years of this district, we anticipate further expanding the Chippewa Street parking lot by acquiring a couple of additional properties, and as I said, expanding that parking lot, including lighting and landscaping and property acquisitions. Just one thing to note is that, because this has been a question regarding the timing of the creation of this district, if a TIF district is created before October 1st, or in this case October 1st of 2017, the base value of that district reverts to January 1 of that year. So the base value for this particular district will be January 1st of 2017. If we were creating this district after October 1st, the base value would be January 1 of 2018. Developments that are anticipated in the project plan include the 200 block of Water Street with an estimate of the 2018 assessed value of $14 million. We're anticipating that there'll be additional assessed value in the next year for that same property as the commercial space on the first floor is finished out and leased. We're anticipating another $2 million in assessed value. And then in 2019 and 2022, we're anticipating additional developments of 15, with an assessed value of $15 million each occurring in those years. Once again, if these developments don't occur as anticipated, then we will not make all of the capital expenditures contemplated in the project plan until they do. This is the financial feasibility table that was included within the project plan. Based upon the projections, the project costs that I just went through and the projections of new value, we're anticipating that this tax incremental district will break even in year 14 of its 20-year life. That would be in year 2030. At that time, again, if all of these projections hold true, at that time, we would be in a position to be able to close this district prior to the end of its projected life. The Plan Commission did review the proposed creation of tax incremental district number 12 at their last meeting. They made, at their 2 meetings ago, a month ago. In approving the resolution that evening, the Plan Commission made 3 findings. First of all, they found that the project plan creating TID number 12 is feasible. Secondly, they found that the project plan was in general conformance with the comprehensive plan of the City of Eau Claire. And last, that it's in the public interest by increasing and diversifying the local property tax and job base. Tomorrow evening or tomorrow afternoon, with the resolution before you, we'll be asking the City Council to make 4 findings. Those findings include that the project plan is feasible and in conformance with the comprehensive plan, that not less than 50% of the property within the proposed district is suitable for mixed-use development, that the improvement of the area is likely to enhance the value of substantially all property in the district, and that the project costs relate directly to promoting the area for mixed-use development. I guess upcoming events related to this include the public input this evening. Council will be asked to adopt a resolution tomorrow afternoon creating the district, and then lastly, the Joint Review Board will ultimately vote on the creation of this district and the project plan at their meeting, which is scheduled for September 15th, Thursday of this week at 9:00 a.m. So with that, I would be happy to answer questions.
Councilmember Wilt.
Thank you, Council President. Mr. Winsands, how will it work exactly with the residential properties? What are the options here for?
Sure. The statute provides, several things as it relates to the residential properties. So it talks about that TID funds can be used for constructing new buildings or structures, can be used for demolition, alteration, remodeling, repair, or reconstruction of existing buildings, structures, and fixtures, other than the demolition of properties listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So what we anticipate is that it may be some combination of programs along the lines of perhaps rehabilitation programs to provide low or no interest loans to property owners to rehabilitate their properties. One of the goals of the Historic Randall Park Neighborhood Association is to convert or allow for the conversion of duplexes back to single-family homes and encourage single-family home ownership. So that could be a program that might be funded, something that would provide maybe, again, some sort of low interest or no interest loan. I sent out an email earlier today with some information about the City of La Crosse and City of Kenosha. La Crosse has actually entered into a partnership with one of their neighborhood revitalization corporations and provide a matching grant, and the city will provide up to $500,000 in funding through a tax incremental district if the Neighborhood Revitalization Corporation is able to raise $500,000. So it's a matching grant type program. City of Kenosha has used TID funds to acquire and demolish dilapidated properties within areas and made those properties available to private developers for redevelopment. And then they also have a similar program to what I was describing, which is the owner rehabilitation program. So several different options, but what we really want to do through this is work with the Historic Randall Park Neighborhood Association and the Redevelopment Corporation to figure out which of those programs are of the most interest, and then anything we develop will need to come back to the City Council ultimately for your approval, and then appropriation of funds to fund that program.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Von Hayden.
A couple questions. One, how does this proposal for this TIF fit with our TIF policy? Is this, I realize when we set that up, I don't know if we talked about mixed-use developments in there. Does this work with our TIF policy that we adopted?
Yes, it does. Our TIF policy talks about the use of TIF funds for neighborhood revitalization being appropriate, so that is provided in there, and all the other improvements that we're talking about are public improvements. There are no developer incentives being provided for in this project plan. So the project plan is consistent with our TIF policy.
Okay, and the second thing is the major building that you showed in there for 217, seeing that the top floors of that now is owned by the university or is a dorm for the university, are we going to have an agreement similar to the one we had on the dorm down here in the river, that it will remain as a taxable property?
First of all, it's not owned by the university. It's owned by Blue Gold Real Estate, which is a nonprofit entity. There's actually a two-part test for determining whether or not properties are tax exempt. One of them is it has to be owned by a not-for-profit entity, but it also has to be used for an eligible purpose. It's our opinion that this property is taxable, but since we did not provide any developer assistance, to the developer of this property, there's no development agreement in place that would require the property owner to continue that property in a taxable status. If the property owner wanted to apply for tax exempt status, they could do that, and we would evaluate the request at that time.
Okay, so it is a potential that the property could become non-taxable.
It's certainly possible.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Oh, Councilmember Stroller.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Winzenz, I have a couple questions as well. You mentioned the proposed developments or the developments you're planning on seeing added to the TIF here, the $2 million for the retail on the bottom of those residences, and then a couple other $15 million developments. On a TIF, are you saying that development would not occur but for the TIF? I mean, I guess that's the but for clause we haven't talked about.
Yes. I mean, that is in essence what we're saying, is that we're creating an environment where areas in this particular district would not redevelop without the project expenditures that are being proposed within the project plan. Now, it's not saying that no development would occur within that particular district, but there are certainly areas of the district that have been in their same state, if you will, since at least the mid-'80s when I came over to visit a friend who was in college. So clearly that area is not redeveloping, and we believe that these improvements will enhance that area and the redevelopment potential of those areas.
Okay. And then the second part of the question, the proposed improvements here, a lot of these, except for the neighborhood revitalization, really, a lot of these could almost be considered just maintenance type situations. We already have a bike trail, so other than acquiring the properties along Menominee Street, really, there's not anything new here. You have a 20-year TIF. Do we have a plan to acquire those properties rather than as they become available? Because I mean it could be, they might not become available within that 20-year TIF plan, and then our point of having this in here? It doesn't seem like it makes sense, but.
Well, ultimately, those decisions would be up to, up to a future city council, but, it's our intent to, or it's my intent at least, to work with property owners, and as they become interested in selling, we become an interested buyer for them. It's been in city plans for, in fact, it's been in so long, as I understand it, that it was actually taken out of the last update to the comprehensive plan to acquire those properties along the river. And this provides a funding mechanism to do that.
Is it possible to negotiate with, and this might be off point, but is it possible to negotiate with them to have a right of first refusal for the city on something like that?
We could certainly try to negotiate a right of first refusal.
Okay. Then, if I had one more question. The parking lot as well that you're proposing to improve as part of this is not even located within the TID. Is there a reason it's not located within the TID?
Yes, the reason it's not located is that when we remove value from the TID, it takes away from the tax increment that the district is generating. So in this particular case, we would be acquiring properties and demolishing them, which would be removing value from the district. So that's why I left it outside of the TID.
In essence, won't that then be removing value from the rest of the tax base?
It will, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Worthman.
Thank you, Council President. Mr. Winzens, would you be able to describe the difference between the sort of hard boundaries that were on the first map and the half-mile radius essentially around that, and how those two are created, or why those are, how you come to find those two different boundaries?
Well, the boundaries of the district itself, there's I guess a bit of an art in crafting these boundaries, and one could certainly debate them a little bit. But one of the things that I do try to do when I establishing the boundaries or putting something together is just what I was talking to Councilmember Strobel about, is not include areas where we think we're going to be removing value from the district, because we really don't want to start out in a decrement situation or have value coming out of the district. And in addition, certainly we want to include the areas where we think projects are going to develop. So those are some of the things that I take into consideration when I'm thinking about a district. Now, the half-mile radius is simply that. It's just a half mile around this the proposed district that we're creating, and any properties that fall within that half-mile radius or any are eligible for we can spend TID dollars on projects within a half mile of that radius. So really, it's the boundary of the district itself that we go through and decide, which blocks are going to be in and which blocks are going to be out. The other thing that we have to do, and why there's a big kind of tail to the district going off to the west, is you have to include whole parcels within the district. And so in that particular area, the city owns property that's running along the Chippewa River south of Market Street. Well, I couldn't just run that line down 8th Avenue straight to the river, because it would have bisected a city parcel. So I needed to extend that tail off to that end. So
part of the reason I asked that question is because the Menominee Corridor, there's been a lot of discussion about the potential growth in that area with the developments that are happening with the university and the Y and medical, et cetera. And so I was just wondering if it made sense to actually continue it down the Menominee Street corridor or not.
Sure, and that's something that we talked about internally, and we can do one of two things. We can either amend the boundaries of this district at some point in the future, if and when the projects along contemplated projects along Menominee Street proceed, or we could establish a new district within that particular area, and we'll make that decision at some point in the future when those developments are more imminent.
Okay, thank you.
Last one. Just one more thing, Mr. Winzens, the neighborhood revitalization in there, it's my recollection that the neighborhood is eligible in TID 11 for neighborhood revitalization monies already.
There is a portion of the historic Randall Park neighborhood that is within a half mile of TID 11, but it's not nearly as large an area as is provided for in this project plan.
Councilmember Mitchell.
And is it the case that neighborhood revitalization is part of the project plan of TID 11?
There are no funds in the project plan in TID 11 for neighborhood revitalization, but it does include the half-mile language. So if we wanted to use funds from TID number 11 for neighborhood revitalization, we would have to amend the project plan.
Okay. I see no further questions. Thank you so much. Are there members of the public who came to speak about this proposed new district? Welcome.
Good evening. I'm David Barnes, 420 4th Avenue. I am the chairman of the Historic Randall Park Neighborhood Redevelopment Corporation, and the board supports the creation of TID number 12. We also look forward to working in the future with the powers that be, using the fruits of this TID to revitalize our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. We have no questions for you. Thank you.
Good evening. Helene Smyer, 320 Broadway Street in historic Randall Park. And I'm just going to echo what Mr. Barnes said, only on behalf of the Neighborhood Association. As Mr. Winzan said, he came to our meetings. We pretty much grilled him, gave him a hard time, made him come back. But we look forward to working with the city. We think that it's very generous of the city to create this residential TIF. And as I understand, it's quite unprecedented. It's not usually done in cities, so I thank whoever did all the groundwork for it, and we are grateful, and we will help in any way we can as an association. Any questions?
Thank you, Mrs. Smyer. I see no questions for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Tomorrow we'll take one more step towards creating possibly our 12th TID district. Our last item tonight, before we go into closed session, is a public discussion on a resolution vacating a portion of Beach Street from First Avenue to the Chippewa River. Mr. Solberg.
Good evening. This should be a little bit shorter than the previous, so I will try to be straightforward. The city, this map was in your council packet. The city received a request to vacate an unimproved portion of public right-of-way on Beach Street from First Avenue to the Chippewa River. This shaded portion is the part of the right-of-way that is being requested to be vacated. For perspective, here's Madison Street, Oxford Avenue, the Chippewa River and Phoenix Park. The vacation request is for this red portion that is right off the end of my marker. Of note, the city council vacated the south half of the right-of-way here in 1985. During that vacation action, the north half was retained as city right-of-way, and currently has a storm sewer that runs through that right-of-way, And the city would retain a utility easement for this right-of-way if the right-of-way is vacated. The proposed street vacation would not impact our current or future utility needs in the area. It would not impact our vehicular transportation needs. We don't have a purpose for having a street in this location. It does cross a corridor that was mentioned in city plans for having a potential multi-use or pedestrian trail that crosses along here. However, there are no active plans for that at this time. And lastly, here is a street view picture of what the area for the vacation request looks like currently. And it's the area between this shed and this garage here, and it's 33 feet wide. With that, I'll take any questions.
Councilmember Strong.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Solberg, so it's a utility easement, so do we have storm sewer, is it dumping into the river there? Is that what we're
Correct.
using it for?
Yep, the drainage system for First Avenue and Beach Street does flow through this property, and there is an outfall into the Chippewa River.
Just out of curiosity, if the person wanting to develop that, is there any other alternative to that draining the storm sewer someplace else so that property could be developed?
There are always other options for that, but it would require digging up the street that was recently redone in 2013, I believe, First Avenue. So there would be a very significant cost that would, in essence, be replacing something that's 4 years old that should have another 75 years of life to it.
Did you say 4 years old?
4 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and I see no further questions. Are you? The applicant is here. A member of the public wishes to speak on this item.
Good evening. My name is Anton Smets, 28 Newton Street, Eau Claire. My family and I are the owners of the property, and that's 1227, 1307 is the property to which the vacation would apply. We also own the house next door in 1227. The reason that we ask for this is because we believe it makes sense in terms of the options that we have about the development of that lot. And we do believe there is a precedent, as has been mentioned to you before. In 1985, this part, and it's not 33, it's actually 16, it's half of 33, was offered to the owner of 1307, but they declined for whatever reason. But the city thought it was okay to offer this before. With respect to the other precedent, we are extremely aware of the storm sewer and the issues involved with that. As you can see, we built a garage on the property, and I signed lengthy papers stating that if there ever has to be any kind of repair, it may be as bad as having to tear down the garage to make the repair. We took that risk. We knew that. We don't think it would be necessary. There are no plans. If Mr. Strobel found a way to get rid of the storm system, maybe, but there's no plans to develop it. It simply allows us to pay you guys a little bit more taxes and have a nicer setback. It actually gains us 8 foot of setback. I do understand the concern about the passage for the bike trail. In fact, when the property was for sale, I went to Mr. Tufte's office and asked about that because I knew that that could be an issue. I was told that Mr. Peterson would be counseled as to whether this is an active plan. My information was that there are currently no funds or no active plan. I've heard that word tonight also. I think there was another comment made about the discussion that just segued into this, about asking people to sell their homes. He used the term voluntary. I do understand, at least again, that's what I was told, that there would probably no interest to acquire these properties by eminent domain or any relevant other statute, that it would be voluntarily. I think as a family, we are betting on and we are realizing that this particular strip is going to look very different in about 10 years. People are very excited about being that close to downtown, having the river access, and we absolutely are not going to be the first people who are going to spend money to make this a much nicer area, but we also have absolutely no interest to sell. There are now 4 owners in that particular stretch who I know for sure would not ever voluntarily let go of their property, and 2 of them is my family. You would have to wait until my son is 89, that's 50 years from now, but I don't think it's going to happen. So I think that this is what's going to happen here. These houses will be rebuilt, renovated. The house rebuilt is really not fixable, and so something needs to happen. It simply means the neighborhood is going to look better, you're going to get more tax money, and I do appreciate that one of the members of the Planning Commission commented that they supported that. Last, my wife and I have been very active in Thorpe's Commons to try to promote the Woon-erf concept. I have not been able to teach the people here the right pronunciation of it, so let's call it the Woon-erf. That is the solution, I believe, or a very realistic solution for what ultimately may happen with that area. And I would hope that you would pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smets. I see no questions for you. Thank you for your patience tonight. Okay. That brings to an end the public portion of our meeting. The City Council will now convene into closed session to discuss public employee collective bargaining matters, specifically the 2018-19 labor negotiations with Wisconsin Professional Police Association Local 9, which is permitted in closed session for competitive or bargaining reasons. On a motion by Councilmember Weld, seconded by Councilmember Klinkhammer to enter into closed session. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton?
Aye.
Kincaid?
Aye.
Klinkhammer?
Aye.
Mitchell? Aye. Strobel?
Aye.
T-Walt?
Aye.
Von Hayden?
Aye.
Well?
Aye.
Workman?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
The Eau Claire City Council meeting will return in a moment. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM. We now return you to the Eau Claire City Council meeting.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton?
Here.
Emmanuel? Kincaid?
Here.
Klinkhammer?
Here.
Mitchell?
Here.
Strobel?
Here.
T-Walt?
Here.
Von Hayden?
Here.
Well?
Here.
Workman? John?
Here.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk, and welcome everyone to the Tuesday, September 12th legislative session of the Eau Claire City Council. During its legislative session, the council deliberates and takes action on the agenda items before us. We have prepared for this responsibility by working with citizens and collaborating with staff and reading the considerable amount of material in our packets. We arrived this afternoon ready to perform our duty. We do welcome citizens who are joining us in chambers, and as always, are grateful to community television for streaming and broadcasting these proceedings for people who cannot attend in person. With that introduction, we will begin our work of the afternoon, which does begin with our consent agenda. Do council members have questions or wish to remove an item for separate consideration? Councilmember Strobel?
Yes, number 7, well, the one that says procurement 2017-57 Cannery District Trail Construction.
Questions or separate consideration?
Just a question.
Okay. Any others? Councilmember Strobel, your question? Are you ready?
To staff, I guess. I've been asked by people that are interested in developing down there, clearing the trail and cutting the brush and stuff. I know some of it's been done to date, but still some consideration that they can't see the river. And are we going to be opening that up more? I don't know if it's similar to Phoenix Park, or what is the plan for that?
I think Mr. Solberg is in the audience. City engineer.
Thank you. The plan for this fall is to construct the trail on top of the bank. We're not going down below the bank where there are some unimproved trails, some degraded granite trails planned for the future, and I believe there's disc golf that's planned in the future. The project that we're awarding tonight is for the concrete trail that will go from the sidewalk on Madison Street along the top of the bank and then connect to the High Bridge. And we did clear out some future vistas earlier this year where you'll be able to stop and look out over the river. But the bulk of the lower canopy and the brush that would be cleared out with the disc golf is not part of this contract. That'll be a future.
I was trying to bring this up. I thought within that, I can't click on it and I can't get it. I thought there was a lot of brush clearing.
There is some more along the trail to get the roots out and to get the remaining portion of what we need for the trail construction, but it's not for the whole bank, the whole clearing for the ultimate build out that we'll have for the park there.
Just one more. So the trail will go along the top of the river all the way from Madison Street to the High Bridge.
Yep.
Will you be able to see the river?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Not everywhere, but the majority of the places you will. The canopy will be lifted and the vistas will be cleared out and you'll be able to view above the lower brush that's in the bottoms.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Solberg.
Any other questions? On a motion then by Councilmember Beaton, seconded by Councilmember Tewalt, the consent agenda is moved. Discussion? And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton?
Aye.
Kincaid?
Aye.
Clinkhammer?
Aye.
Mitchell?
Aye.
Strobel?
Aye.
Tewalt?
Aye.
Von Hayden?
Aye.
Weld?
Aye.
Workman? John?
Aye.
And the consent agenda is adopted, passed. I have one proclamation this afternoon and would invite the members of the Fireball Run Adventurely series to meet me at the podium. Raise that. All for one. Yeah. So usually I read through this, so because people gives them a chance to just think about things, and then if you have, do you have some things to say? Or comments? Okay. It feels formal, but and Ms. Merle has worked on a great PowerPoint, so that'll be scrolling while I read. So. Okay. This would go under the city manager. When he first took his job, he wanted us to have more fun. Okay, so we're working on that, and this is one way we're going to work on that. This proclamation I am happy to read today. It reads, whereas the Fireball Run Adventurely series, the race to recover America's missing children, is America's largest active recovery effort for missing kids. And the Fireball Run teams are assigned a missing child and are provided 1,000 missing child flyers to distribute along a 2,000-mile journey. which has aided in the recovery of 50 missing children over the course of 10 seasons. The Fireball Run is bringing its effort to Eau Claire and filming throughout the region on Saturday, September 23rd of this year. The city, county, and area partners have collaborated to plan events throughout the Eau Claire area in support of the mission of the Fireball Run and the dedication of the participants to its cause. The team is comprised of representatives of the Eau Claire Area Economic Development Corporation, Ms. Wasson, and Xcel Energy, and Mr. French with the city. Therefore, the City of Eau Claire City Council does proclaim Saturday, September 23rd as Fireball Run Day, a race to recover America's missing children in the City of Eau Claire, and encourage citizens to be mindful of this issue in our community. Oh, a few words about your event.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all the support. This has been a wonderful event that we're bringing to our community, not only to highlight the natural and industrial resources that Eau Claire area brings to Wisconsin, but as Carrie Kincaid mentioned, to help find America's missing children. In 10 seasons, the Fireball Run has been responsible to locate 50 missing children, and we're hopeful to close a few more this season. So Julie, Tony, and Luke Hansen will be traveling with the Fireballers, and hopefully this is, oh, it's gone now. Yep, this is, Alexis will be the child that will hopefully locate this year. And we invite you all to attend the event in Phoenix Park this Saturday, the 23rd. All day you'll be able to interact with all 40 teams, and you'll get to see all the other posters and other children that we're helping to locate. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, that's it? That's right. I think so. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you. I think Ms. Wasson didn't have a chance to mention that Ms. Tony and Mr. Hansen will be going on the journey, a 2,000-mile journey, leaving on Saturday. And I think it all takes place in the upper Midwest. They travel from city to city, answer questions about the city, and distribute flyers and interact with development entities and regular citizens. So it's a pretty cool event, and we're happy to be part of it, of course. And now we continue our agenda with our business agenda. Item number 8 is a resolution granting a temporary expansion of a fermented malt beverage and class wine license to Forage for the Volume 1 First Taste Culinary Crawl on September 14th. Mr. Hofer.
Thank you. This is an application to temporarily expand Forage's alcohol license in Banbury Place. Right now, Forage is just this location right here. Volume 1 is sponsoring a culinary crawl, which will be an opportunity for individuals to sample food from a number of different local vendors on this floor. What they're asking to do is to expand the license from room 212, 214, the Forage space, to also include room 209, 213, 202, and the hallway areas, so individuals will be able to potentially walk from space to space while they're consuming alcohol. There's going to be 2 bars that will be selling alcohol. They'll have the floor completely locked off. It'll be a 21 and over only event. And some of the businesses in this space will still be open, not where alcohol is being consumed or served. But people will be able to go check out the businesses, check out some of the the food from local restaurants that we have. And again, steps are being taken to completely secure this area so no one under 21 will be able to get in. IDs will be checked. They'll have plenty of volunteers. My understanding is at least 15 volunteers working the event. There were no objections at license review to granting this temporary expansion.
Questions for Mr. Hofer? Councilmember Zhang?
Thank you. I know you mentioned a Class C wine. What is that?
I'm sorry,
Well, here's a Class C, a Class B, and then you said Class
they
C
have a beer and wine license only, so there won't be they don't have a liquor license. We're not expanding their liquor. We're just expanding the beer and wine license that Forage currently has. It's just for this event.
Okay.
Do you know if the organizers wish to speak about their event?
I did not see them here. Oh.
I don't have anything to add except we're up to about 21, 22 volunteers now, so we have lots of people to monitor and check IDs and, yeah.
Okay. The volunteer count is going up. Good. Okay, I see no further questions then and no presentation. So on a motion by Councilmember Weld, seconded by Councilmember Klinkhammer, item 8 is moved and discussion is in order. And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Kincaid?
Aye.
Klinkhammer?
Aye.
Mitchell?
Aye.
Strobel?
Aye.
T-Walt?
Aye.
Von Hayden?
Aye.
Wells?
Aye.
Worthman?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Beaton?
Aye. And that resolution passes. Good luck with your event, of course. Item 9 is a resolution granting a temporary Class B fermented malt beverage and Class B wine license to the Friends of the L.A. Phillips Library for an event on October 7th called Hogwarts After Dark. Mr. Hofer.
This is the latest in a series of After Dark events. You may remember we've had some at the Chippewa Valley Museum, the Children's Museum, and I think one other location. The Friends of the Library have applied for an alcohol license to cover the public spaces of the library. It's going to be a 21 and over event only while the library is closed. There aren't going to be any children on site during the event. Very much standard precautions as far as number of volunteers, no alcohol being taken out of the public spaces, signage up saying, where alcohol is permitted and where it is not. This is obviously the first, there's never previously been a license approved for the public library, so there is a little bit of a policy consideration for you to take on. This being a first-time event for the library, and then otherwise following the standards for these kind of events, there weren't any objection at license review. And again, wanted to make clear, part of our consideration was the fact that obviously if it was during business hours where children might be present, we might have more concerns, but minus that, largely a policy decision for the city council to decide whether to grant or deny this application. And I do see the applicant is here if you have further operational questions.
Questions for Mr. Hofer? Councilmember Mitchell?
Thank you. Mr. Hofer, why is it a policy matter? Because it's a public building?
Correct. It's a public building, and obviously it's a public building that's generally used for family and child-centered activities, but again, it's going to be after hours while it's closed. Whether or not to open this venue up for activities that include alcohol is a policy decision for the city council. Operationally, we didn't have any concerns at license review, but again, there were policy considerations for this council to consider that are for you to consider, not for the license review committee to consider.
Further questions for Mr. Hofer or the library representative? Or any questions? I see none. Thank you. On a motion then by Councilmember Von Hayden, seconded by Councilmember Mitchell. Item 9 is moved. Discussion. And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Strobel,
Aye.
T-Walt,
Aye.
Von Hayden,
Aye.
Wells,
Aye.
Workman,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Kincaid.
Aye. And that resolution passes. Item 10 is a resolution declaring a 4,950 square foot section of vacant land along the southwest section of 1036 East Grand Avenue, declaring it vacant excess land and authorizing the sale. I'm sorry.
No, that's totally okay.
Ms. Basom.
Like you stated, before you is a resolution to declare this section 4,950 square feet of land excess and authorize the sale to the adjacent property owner. He's looking to purchase this section of land to relocate his garage. His garage is currently located on the riverbank, making it difficult for him to, well, impossible for him to rebuild his garage with the topography and with the location of his property. This was recommended by Parks and Waterway and Plan Commission. And with that, are there any questions?
Questions for Ms. Basom? I see none. Oh,
Sorry.
Councilmember Worthman?
Thank you, Council President. Just for clarification, you said it was recommended by Waterways, but I know there's been talk about potential trail going along that stretch, and I'm guessing that'd be lower down, though?
Yep, we're still retaining everything on the backside for a future trail if we go that route.
Thank you.
And I see no further questions. Oh, Councilmember Strobel, sorry.
Again, on that same line of questioning, I guess, when I was in the neighborhood association, when we did the neighborhood plan, I know we looked at Grand Avenue as potentially something that maybe the city could eventually acquire these homes as they became available for trail. We also had Brian Amundson down there because a lot of that is cliff and there's some fairly large chunks that actually fall away, which a lot of it doesn't seem that safe to me. And I wondered if Waterways considered any of that. I think just the area you show there for trail, I don't think would necessarily go all the way through.
Let's see if I have any other maps.
Because a lot of the homes and the properties are built right to that bluff.
Right. As far as I am aware, we weren't looking at purchasing any of those homes at this time, but we are retaining the back section if we were to decide to make a trail or do anything further in the future.
Do you know the distance of the back section? And is it possible that maybe the property owners are maybe using some of that, as their own right now?
I know that the current abutting property owner was maintaining the section next to him, so I feel that's fair to say that they probably are maintaining a little bit of the back section, but it is very steep back there, so, I mean, they might be mowing a little section, but there's not much use back there.
Thank you.
And I see no further questions, and thank you. On a motion then by Councilmember Strobel, Councilmember Zhang, seconded by Councilmember Worthman. Item 10 is moved and discussion is in order. Councilmember Strobel?
I'm not going to support it at this time just because it is right next to sort of Boyd Park there, and I just feel in looking at that area that it's sort of a dangerous area with homes and garages and fences built back there. If you go look from Banbury over, you'll see parts of that bluff that have fallen away. And I do think that down the road, it would be something the city should consider looking at, just like we talked to the gentleman last night about First Avenue, and we're talking about Menominee Street today. Those are areas that I feel potentially in the future the city may be interested in acquiring. So I'm not going to support it at this time.
And further discussion, Councilmember Worthman?
Thank you, Council President. Just to Councilmember Strobel's point, that area, I'm assuming some of the conversation at Waterways and Parks has to do with the fact that it is right on the edge of a cliff, and that the potential trail would probably not be along the top, but it might be along below the cliff ledge, would be my guess, is kind of what the discussion was about. So I think if they've reviewed it and they think it's a good idea, I'm going to support it.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Aye.
Strobel,
No.
T-Wolf,
Aye.
Von Hayden,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Kincaid,
Aye.
Linkhammer.
Aye.
And that resolution passes. Item 11 is a resolution granting a permanent encroachment to the property owner at 202 Gibson Street for an underground vault. Mr. Sober.
Here's the location map of the vault in question. It's an existing vault, presumed to be as old as the building that it is attached to. We have Graham Avenue, Gibson Street. The area is under construction currently. Here is a street view of what the vault looks like. Here is the casting that provides access, and the vault is below the sidewalk level and provides access to the basement of the building. Here is what the encroachment area looks like on sidewalk level. It's outlined by this orange line. This is the access casting that provides access vertically down into the existing vault. And then this is what the existing casting looks like. It opens up and provides that access below. So the resolution before you would grant a permanent encroachment to the property owner of 202 Gibson Street for the encroachment for this underground vault that is existing. We became aware of the encroachment prior to the Graham Avenue construction project. We had requested at that time for the property owner to remove the encroachment in conjunction with our construction project, and they had expressed a desire to keep the vault and requested a permanent encroachment. We are currently under construction in that area, so time is of the essence for either granting the encroachment or not granting the permanent encroachment. If the permanent encroachment is granted, there are a number of conditions that will be applied to the encroachment, such as our standard insurance and indemnification requirements. And then also the applicant will be required to make structural repairs and provide a casting at their cost for to make sure that the structural stability of that vault is safe and the surface of the casting is a non-slip surface. Currently it's smooth and it has some bumps and not the current standard for the casting. And then also, even though it's labeled as a permanent encroachment, the encroachment could be removed and restored at the applicant's expense within 10 days of receiving notice from either the city of Eau Claire or the state of Wisconsin. With that, I'll take any questions.
Councilmember Von Hayden.
Just as a curiosity, you say, how are they going to remove that cover and make that so it's non-slippery?
They have different cover. It's a whole casting, like a manhole casting. So you would replace the whole unit. And typically the new covers that you see in the sidewalks that are electrical utilities have a crosshatch pattern in it, so it doesn't get slippery if it gets wet.
Okay, and the person that owns this vault or maintains it, they're agreeable to these conditions?
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Also, out of curiosity, do they use it? Is there something in there?
It's my understanding that they do. The applicant is in the crowd this evening, if you'd like to ask, but it was important enough to request a permanent encroachment with language that if we do need this land, we were able to construct this area with the private and public utilities going around it because it's under construction now. But if we come back 25, 50 years with 10 days notice, this would have to come out.
Councilmember Strobel.
Thank you. We have several other vaults on the street, on Barstow Street, correct? I mean, but you said there may be for utilities. I know there's...
They're primarily for electric utilities and telecommunications. So most of the vaults that you see within the right-of-way are for utilities that are regulated by the Public Service Commission that share our right-of-way with our city utilities. We don't have a large number that I am aware of access vaults that would provide access to a private building.
And one more question I was kind of curious about. He's having to request a permanent encroachment. Or is that what it is? Yeah. And was there nothing with prescriptive rights where that's been there for 100 years and that didn't apply in this situation?
In reviewing it with our city attorney's office prior to this, that was not appropriate for the situation. They would not have prescriptive rights.
Okay. And one more quick question. You may or may not know the answer to this. I just read this right now. It says that they're required to carry general liability insurance, and there it says also they're required to file a bond with the general liability insurance. What is the bond for that, the general liability?
They would have, there's an existing city statute that requires that. I believe it's about a $10,000 bond that needs to be filed, but it is in conjunction with encroachments, and it's an existing requirement.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember T-Wall.
Thank you, Council President. Just maybe 3 short questions. Is there other access to the basement?
Yes.
Okay. And is something like that lockable, or can I just pull and open it and investigate, or any public? How do those?
It would be lockable.
Okay. Third, is the rumor that the twin of the Hope Diamond might be in that vault? Just thought. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
no comment.
that was really just in fun.
Yeah.
Piqued everyone's interest out there.
Yeah.
Councilmember Klinkhammer.
Thank you. Is there an actual freight elevator in it, or is it just an access port?
There's not. It's just an access with a empty concrete vault down there.
Okay.
Okay, and Councilmember Strobel.
Could we hear from the applicant if anybody's done?
Is the applicant interested in saying anything?
Sure. Good evening, William Glass, 6056 Inwood Drive, Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I'm the owner of Standing since 1895, which includes the property located at 202 Gibson Street. Requesting for the permanent easement for this vault because it's a practical matter, to be honest. My wife operates the business that is located in the ground floor of that building. While there is access to the basement, it is down a set of fairly old stairs. The building was built in 1895. It has been modified many times, but we have actually used that vault in the past to get very heavy refrigeration equipment down into the basement. If you're unaware, there's a tavern operating in that building with a very large cooler. So there's large cast iron pumps that we have lowered through that vault in the past, as well as bulk carbon dioxide tanks. So they're very difficult to get down steps, especially when they're very, very heavy. So in the past, what we've done is actually use a forklift to lower heavy equipment down through that vault to get it in the basement. So just to give you an idea of the practicality of the vault. And I'm here for any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. I don't see any questions. And any further questions? And on a motion by Councilmember Beaton, seconded by Councilmember T-Wall, item 11 is moved. Further discussion? And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Strobel,
Aye.
T-Wall,
Aye.
Von Hayden,
Aye.
Wells,
Aye.
Workman.
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Kincaid,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Mitchell.
Aye. And that resolution passes. Item 12 is a resolution vacating a portion of Beach Street from First Avenue to the Chippewa River. We had a presentation last evening. Do you have questions about this item? Then on a motion by Councilmember Weld, seconded by Councilmember Klinkhammer, item 12 is moved. Any discussion? And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember T-Wall,
Aye.
Von Hayden,
Aye.
Wells,
Aye.
Workman. John,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Kincaid,
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Strobel.
Aye.
And that resolution passes. Item 13 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to amend the development agreement with SW Properties for street and utility improvements at the Jeffers Road Townhouses 2. Mr. Jensko.
The final plat for this phase of the Jeffers Road Townhomes was approved by the council at the last meeting. One of the conditions was the development agreement, which this item before you is. The initial development agreement was approved in 2013. It was executed by the developer in 2016, and then the second phase was added in February, this spring of 2017. This amended agreement includes special conditions for financing the development, and with the three phases together, we come up to a total of $498,000 and some change. It includes construction inspection responsibilities and development review fees. And there's also a provision in this to reimburse the developer for extending the sanitary sewer across Jeffers Road that's estimated at about $4,000. The reason that's in there is that as part of the development agreement, the developer already has to come across the road to connect the water main and loop the water main. So we felt that while this road was disturbed, it'd be good to get the sewer across. He would normally need to bring it to here, and this will bring it just to the other side. And that allows the extension to come up. There's a valley just to the west of Jeffers Road behind the existing homes that it will allow that to be served without a lift station, or an extensive extension through the park to the north past the wood site and the community gardens. The original development agreement included deferral along Jeffers Road for the first two phases. That was because Jeffers Road is a rural cross-section with a ditch for drainage. This one does not do that. It requires a sidewalk along Jeffers Road with the provision that it will be constructed as part of what is now, instead of a future project, a project scheduled for 2020. And so now that there's a finite date on that, it calls for the construction of the sidewalk with that project. Removes the word deferral. Having said that, I think I will stop, and if there's questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Councilmember Klinkhamer.
Thank you. Mr. Jensko, why would they not extend the sidewalk through the initial stage of this development?
We did that this way because this was the phase that was being amended.
Okay.
If you choose to do that, you could. It's special condition I3. If you want to make that more clear on that point, you could say for all three phases.
Well,
and we would change this map.
If we didn't amend it to do that now, would it happen at the time that Jeffers is rebuilt in 2020?
What would have happened before is when the construction project came before you, there would have been sidewalk under consideration the full length of Jeffers Road, and it would have been considered through here as well. And it would have been done through the assessment policy. What this does is it has the words in here that this will be constructed, so it essentially takes this part of it out of that discussion in 2020 when we have the street hearings. The developer was anticipating that there would be sidewalk at that time and was prepared to pay those assessments then, and that's what will happen. So if you amend it to include the whole thing, it just means you've dealt with it now instead of in 2020 when there's the street hearings.
Thank you.
And further questions? I see none. We'll see what happens. On a motion and by Councilmember Von Hayden, seconded by Councilmember Mitchell, item 13 is moved. Discussion? And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Von Hayden.
Aye.
Wells.
Aye.
Workman.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Kincaid.
Aye.
Klinkhamer.
Aye.
Mitchell.
Aye.
Strobel.
Aye.
T-Walt.
Aye.
And that resolution passes. Item 14 opens up three items, related items, with a resolution approving a final plat for High Clare Estates, north of LaSalle at McKinley Road. Mr. Tufti.
This is the property located north of LaSalle at McKinley Road on the west side of the Princeton Valley development. This is the preliminary plat for the project, which has already been approved. It extends McKinley Road up into the project, creates 70 lots for single-family development. I would note it stubs it then to this property line. That then allows for that to be extended someday when the property owner to the south proposes development, and then it connects to 33rd Street and provides then secondary access into the project. This is the final plat then that is before council this evening, and it creates 54 lots for single-family development. Again, the second phase would complete the loop around for the future plat. The 4 outlots which we highlighted are dedicated to the city for stormwater needs. Access again is an extension of McKinley Road, Highclere Drive, and Nelson Court. Com Center is recommending Nelson Court be renamed to Nelson Woods Court, so it doesn't repeat language or similarity in street name for another location within the community. They do label and non-buildable all areas in excess of 20% slope. They have provided a utility easement, and the final plat is consistent with the approved preliminary plat. The Plan Commission recommended approval with the condition that they change that street name.
Questions for Mr. Tufti? I see none. And on a motion by Councilmember Strobel, seconded by Councilmember Zhang, item 14 is moved. Be there any discussion? There be not. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Wells.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Kincaid.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Mitchell.
Aye.
Strobel.
Aye.
T-Wall.
Aye.
Von Hayden.
Aye.
And that resolution passes. Relatedly, the next item is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a development agreement for Highclere Properties. Mr. Jensen.
And with your permission, I'd like to present both of these items together.
Sure.
Although the council should still vote on them separately.
The second item orders sidewalk.
Yes. This is the development agreement for the plat that Darrell just presented. It's fairly routine. It includes financing, which in this case is a letter of credit for $1,283,000. Construction inspection responsibilities and development review fees. The developer has requested a sidewalk deferral. The solid blue is where the sidewalk would be per our ordinance unless the council grants a deferral. The dash sidewalk is where it already exists in the neighborhood. The developer has submitted a written request asking for deferral of sidewalk on the west side of the road through this area here. And the significance of that is the dark shaded areas, the areas of 20% slope or greater, which by our sewer service plan, we can't disturb those areas without going into an amendment. Now, there'll be a subsequent amendment up north where the road needs to cut through it, but to build a sidewalk through here and get the street grades to work for both sides of the street, there would need to be some grading off the right-of-way. And as you can see, these contour lines are pretty tight till you get down. Actually, there's some through here too, till you get down to the end. The deferral continues out to McKinley. There would still be sidewalk along LaSalle, and I meant LaSalle. It continues to LaSalle. The reason for the last bit of deferral would be the concern with the curves is that a pedestrian might start up the sidewalk, find out that it's going to terminate, and then there'll be a mid-block crossing in the middle of some curves. And so it seemed to make sense to defer from the north end of the power lines all the way down to the street, still have sidewalk on the east side and sidewalk on the west side from that point north.
Questions for Mr. Jensko? I see none. And as to item 15, on a motion by Councilmember Worthman, seconded by Councilmember Beaton, the item is moved and discussion is in order. There being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Worthman.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Kincaid,
Aye.
Linkhammer,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Strobel,
Aye.
T-Walt,
Aye.
Von Hayden,
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
And that resolution passes. Lastly, item 16 is a resolution indicating the location of required sidewalk. The resolution on page 113 does defer sidewalk by an aye vote as pictured on the screen. And on a motion by Councilmember T-Walt, seconded by Councilmember Weld, this resolution is moved. Be there any discussion? There being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Jean,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Kincaid,
Aye.
Linkhammer,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Strobel,
Aye.
T-Walt,
Aye.
Von Hayden,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Workman.
Aye.
And that resolution passes. Good luck with your project. Item 17 is a resolution approving another final plat for Pine Park North on the south side of Mitchell Avenue, west of Hester. Mr. Tufti.
This is the property, south side of Mitchell, west of Hester. There's duplexes across the street, and this is the radio tower immediately behind it. And this final plat creates 5 lots for duplex development. All lots meet the design standard for duplex in an R2 district. They do provide a 10-foot public utility easement along the streets. The streets with city utilities are already stubbed into each of these lots, and therefore there's no development agreement necessary. The Plan Commission has recommended approval.
Questions for Mr. Tufti? See none. On a motion by Councilmember Klinkhammer, seconded by Councilmember Von Hayden, item 17 is moved. Discussion? And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton,
Aye.
Kincaid,
Aye.
Linkhammer.
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Strobel,
Aye.
T-Walt,
Aye.
Von Hayden,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Workman.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
And that resolution passes. Now we move into a resolution with item 18, approving a site plan in a P Public District for a new fire station on Malden Avenue. Do council members have questions regarding the presentation last evening? I forget if we were sent an email with some information today. Mr. Peters, do you? No. I just forgot the background information requested. Do council members, though, have questions about the site plan? On a motion, then, by Councilmember Mitchell? The troublemaker? Seconded by Councilmember Strobel. Item 18 is moved, and discussion is in order. Councilmember Klinkhammer.
As I've been wrestling with this since it came before us on the Plan Commission, the one aspect of this that is most concerning is that even though there may be additional costs involved in locating it on the south side of the property, the response time is negligible, I should say the response time differential is fairly negligible from the north end location. But it would seem to me that if the cost of soil remediation on that end of the property is not prohibitive, that what we would gain with possible development on the northern part would eventually offset that. I guess my question would be, we didn't really talk about that aspect of it that much at the Plan Commission. And I guess the question I would have would be, Do we know enough about what the cost of the remediation would be at that end of the property versus the likelihood that the northern end of the property would develop at some point? I don't know who the question would be directed to, but I don't know the answer.
Mr. Tufti, you want to take a stab at that? Or Mr. Winzens? I think the question is, what is the likelihood that the rest of the property could be developed?
We do know the additional costs of soil remediation, geopiers, additional foundation work required on the southern end of the site in order to construct a fire station at that location. That is between $250,000 and $300,000 for that additional work. We also do know that there is at least one party who has expressed interest in developing on the south end of the site. A private developer has expressed interest in that. I think because the City Council has previously indicated a desire to construct on the northern portion of the site, nobody's expressed interest in that because they think a fire station is going there. I think that from I concur with Mr. Tufti that, from a development pattern standpoint, it would probably make more sense to have the multifamily housing on the northern portion of the site and the fire station on the southern portion. But again, it's not a insubstantial, or it's not a small cost difference to build on the southern part of the site. In addition, at this point in time, because we've gone down the path of designing a fire station and preparing a site plan for the northern portion of the site, if we were to change locations at this point, basically we would need to start the process over again through the site plan, and we would not be able to bid the project this fall. Basically, the bids that we would be opening in a couple of days, we would need to reject and rebid the project in the springtime, and there may be additional costs associated with that as well.
Thank you, and I withdraw my question.
Councilmember Strobel.
It's been moved, right? No? Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to do it, though.
I concur with Mr. Councilmember Klinkhammer's concerns a little bit on the site. You hate to do anything, maybe being a little short-sighted on some of it. And it seems that we get these in increments. So we're getting the site plan, then we're getting the next one, and then we're getting the cost for the fire station. So we're getting it all in different segments. Where, yes, I think if we had all this together, we could look at it and maybe decide if we wanted to make changes based on cost. And unfortunately, I don't know if that's possible at this point, but I certainly would consider it.
Councilmember Thibault.
Thank you, Council President. I'm glad that this is before us. It's a need in the area. The station is very old and antiquated it cannot hold a modern truck. I think in past practice, Council, I've observed, moves these things through this method. It goes to planning, then it comes for the next one, then the procurement. And so I think this is the plan to stick with. We have asked the fire chief and city manager and staff to come up with recommendations. They've moved that through. I think if we're looking at $300K and $300,000 and say, boy, we could build on this side, that covers a lot of other expenses. Our budgets are always tight, whether they're capital or operational. So I see supporting this and look forward to starting to take action this year. It's a need, and the north side is greatly expanding as we're seeing it, and that was one of the urgencies to have this. So.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Thank you. I still think that the southern location is the best, not because I'm concerned about response time. I understand that difference is not really a difference between north and south, but the access is better. It makes more sense, as I said at the Plan Commission, from a land use perspective. It makes more sense for the future and logical development of that parcel in that neighborhood. And I personally didn't understand that I had indicated a desire for the north section. When it came to Plan Commission for rezoning, there were 3 options, and staff had recommended the southern piece, but we rezoned it based on the fact that we would eventually be choosing one of the 3. But I agree, I'm conflicted. I don't think it is as clear-cut a decision because of the cost. That $300,000 is simply not in the budget, although I'm inclined to say we should add it and put it in and build it in the south. So I was very, very clear on my decision to vote no at the Plan Commission. I'm less clear tonight. How's that? Super. Councilmember Klinkhammer.
Having raised this issue, ignorance is no defense under the law, Councilmember Mitchell. It would seem to me that if we were confused or not present enough to go into more detail about that, I think we've gone too far down the road, and I think the need for this process to go forward and build this station is upon us, and we need to support this. I think the other aspect of using the northern portion of this property is the need for the extra 2 bays going forward, and I think if there's that kind of a differential in terms of the soil remediation, there's a greater likelihood that we can get the station that will last and service and the community for a longer period of time. So I think that probably is going to be a tipping point, and I will support it.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? The chair then will just briefly say that I agree with Councilmember Strobel that something is a little amiss about this decision-making process. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I wish it had happened differently, and that the electeds had been able to review and impose a will on the unfolding of the project. I do agree with other council members, though, who have articulated that we are a long way down the path and time is of the essence. It's certainly an important project, and the northern site is not, it's not horrible or bad. It's just not as good as perhaps that another site maybe would have been evaluated in a different way. But anyway, I too will be supporting the resolution as it stands with that reservation. Madam City Clerk?
Councilmember Kincaid?
Aye.
Klinkhammer?
Aye.
Mitchell?
Aye.
Strobel?
Aye.
T-Walt?
Aye.
Von Hayden?
Aye.
Wells?
Aye.
Workman?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Beaton?
Aye. And that resolution passes. A related item, number 19, is a resolution approving a procurement for part of the fire department package. Bid package 1, I think I have that right. Mr. Winzans?
Thank you, Council President Kincaid and City Council. Before you this evening are the award of 3 contracts related to the construction of the new fire station. The reason that this is coming to you in 2 pieces with these contracts relating to the site work and foundation work is that in order to get this station under construction before the frost is in the ground and before the snow flies, our project manager indicated that we really needed to get this bid package bid so that the successful contractors could get materials ordered, so that as soon as we're able to award the bid for the entire fire station, they're ready to start construction. So basically, the hope is that they'll be ready to start moving dirt and putting foundations in basically in 2 weeks. And this allows them to get the materials ordered so that they can begin that work. There were three different bid packages associated that will be awarded in this resolution. The first is for concrete work related to the construction of the fire station. That would be footings. Second is site work, and the third is asphalt paving. As you can see in the table on the screen, this compares the project estimates to the recommended bids. Overall, the bids came in very, very favorably, nearly $90,000 under the project estimate, or nearly 14% difference in the cost. These bids are for a 3-bay fire station. When we, in preparing the bid packets, we did have an alternate to add 2 additional bays. So the contractors did provide bid amounts for the 2 additional bays, and we have those numbers available. So at this time, we're only asking you to award the contracts for the 3 bays. Depending upon how the bids for the entire building come in, we may then come back in 2 weeks and indicate that an award for a 5-bay station would be in order, depending upon, depending upon how those construction bids come back in. This is allowing us to then present the big picture to you with actual costs rather than just cost estimates, which is all we would have at this point in time. So staff is recommending that the City Council award bids in the amount of $563,159 to Market & Johnson for the concrete work, American Express of Eau Claire, Wisconsin for the site work, and Sen Blacktop of Chippewa Falls for asphalt paving. Be happy to answer questions.
Questions for Mr. Winzens? Councilmember Strobel?
Oh, thank you. So by approving this, we're not precluding the possibility of the 5 bays or adding any costs if council so decides?
Not at all. We've already, like I said, with this bid packet, we included an alternate to add the 2 additional bays, and then with the bids that you'll be reviewing in 2 weeks, those will also have an alternate to add the 2 additional bays. So you're not precluding that alternative at all.
Okay, and another question, I'm still back to that site plan thing. So we award the bids now, it starts in October. If we were to not start it in October, it would probably start, what, next March? If we reconsidered our process, so we're gaining, what, 5 months? Would that affect bid prices and all that kind of stuff, just out of curiosity?
I can't tell you with 100% certainty, but from our project manager, it's likely that it would affect bid prices. In fact, now we're usually springtime is a busier construction season for a lot of these folks, whereas the fall of the year they're picking up some projects. So it's likely that there would be some cost increase.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I see none. Thank you. And on a motion by Councilmember Zhang, seconded by Councilmember Worthman, item 19 is moved, the item for the bid package. Discussion? And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Klinkhammer.
Aye. Aye.
Mitchell.
Aye.
Strobel.
Aye.
Seawolf.
Aye.
Von Hayden.
Aye.
Wells.
Aye.
Workman. John.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Kincaid.
Aye. And that resolution passes. Item 20 is a resolution authorizing the fire department to accept grant monies from Walmart Community Grant Program for the purchase of pediatric advanced life support bags. Mr. Bertrand.
Good afternoon. Yeah, this is a grant program through Walmart. It's their community foundation grant, which they look for areas in the community that they think they can give money to simply better the entire community. This grant was written for pediatric bags to carry equipment for the emergency medical calls that we go on for children. The grant has been awarded, and just seeking approval to accept the money.
Questions for Mr. Bertrand? I see none. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
On a motion by Councilmember Beaton, seconded by Councilmember Tewalt. Item 20 is moved. Discussion? And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Aye.
Strobel,
Aye.
Tewalt,
Aye.
Von Hayden,
Aye.
Wells,
Aye.
Workman,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Kincaid,
Aye.
Linkhammer.
Aye.
And that resolution passes. Item 21 is a resolution approving the creation and the project plan for a tax incremental district number 12. Do council members have questions about our presentation last evening? Any questions? On a motion, Councilmember Von Hayden.
I have a question for Jay. Mr. Winsan. This type of TIF that we're talking about being a mixed use, the but-for provision does not apply to this, or how does that work related to this?
Sure. No, the but-for provision still does apply. That applies to the creation of any TIF district. That's actually a finding, a required finding of the Joint Review Board. It's not a required finding of the City Council. The resolution before you this evening contains 5 findings, and none of those are the but-for clause that you're referencing. But it is a requirement of the creation of any TIF district.
Okay. And I guess the concern that I had was including the building that's already being built. And I understand why you're doing that is so to provide funds for it. What's the logic behind that?
Well, I mean, the logic behind including that building is exactly what you stated, excuse me, is to provide the, I guess, the seed money, if you will, for many of the public improvements within the district. Now, the but-for clause doesn't say that there can't be any other development within the district. The but-for clause is saying that without the creation of the district, the development that the area would not develop in the way that the community intends for it to develop or plans for it to develop. But there can be projects already going on within the district, and in the case of the project in the 200 block, if you look at that project specifically, we're not providing any developer assistance, or haven't provided any developer assistance to that particular project. So the but-for test wouldn't even apply to that particular project.
And then going back to the question that I asked last night, if for one reason or other Blue Gold Real Estate or the university would apply for a tax exemption, what's the probability that that could be granted?
Well, I guess it's difficult for me to speculate on a probability. It's my opinion, and in discussions with the city attorney and the city assessor, our initial opinion is that it would be taxable. However, there could be facts or other information presented in an application for tax exempt status that could cause us to change that opinion. But student housing, as I understand it, is not an eligible use for tax exempt status.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Sorry. Thank you. There being no further questions, then on a motion by Councilmember Weld, seconded by Councilmember Klinkhammer, item 21 is moved. Discussion? Councilmember Worthman.
Thank you, Council President, and I thank Mr. Winzens as well and his office for all the work that went into this. This is something that has been talked about for some time, and I've definitely had folks within my district talk about how important it would be to help develop this, both from the neighborhood, from the Water Street Business District. And I think they see this as a real positive. And I'm also excited because I think we're about to see a new opportunity in our community to help build and give back to neighborhoods that will be hugely benefited by something like this. And that's another thing that we've always heard from the redevelopment of downtown. One of the things that people would often say is, well, what about our neighborhoods? When are we going to be taking real dollars and investing in them in our neighborhoods? And it's taken a couple of years, but this is that step in my mind. With the Invest Health project that we heard about last week, which is also an unbelievably exciting opportunity, I think, and the way that it ties in with this TIF district, I think we're really setting ourselves up for success, for really improving folks' lives who live in that area. So this is not only good for business, for the student neighborhood, but it's equally as good for the neighborhood as a whole, I believe, if we support this and vote it up. So I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes. I agree with Councilmember Worthman. I think that the plan objectives of increasing parking in the Water Street area, improving the trail, and ultimately reconstructing that trail along the river, and the funding set aside for neighborhood revitalization are all important. That last piece is particularly interesting, and there are many good reasons for neighborhood revitalization in that area, but I would just mention one, and that is that the success of our downtown and our central business district like Water Street depends on the safety, health, and quality of the surrounding neighborhoods. So if the historic Randall Park neighborhood falls into disrepair, that's going to make the Water Street Business District less desirable for development, less safe for people to go to, and of less interest to the community. So, given all the money that we've put into our central areas, it's very important that we keep our surrounding neighborhoods healthy as well. So, I really appreciate the city manager and other staff for adding this piece to this TIF.
Councilmember Will.
Thank you, Council President. And I echo the sentiments of the other two council members. I just wanted to say that Randall Park District is all ready to go too. I mean, they've created a board, they've created excitement within the neighborhood to get started as soon as the funding is available. And so I think it's something that can take off, rather quickly. And if they continue with the support of the bid or the TID, I think it will we'll start to see the results sooner than what maybe we would have thought. So I will be in support and anxious to see it go to work for that neighborhood and that whole area.
Thank you. And any further discussion? Councilmember Clinton.
In addition to the positive comments about it, the thing that I think excites me most about this is the potential that it represents for other parts of our community. If we could make this one really successful, it's going to be an exciting component for going forward in other areas. So.
Thank you. Okay, there being no further.
No.
Councilmember T-Wall.
Thank you, Council President. I appreciate all the views I've heard, but when I review this plan, I'm not yet in favor of it. And what I see is the TID looks insufficient to recoup its revenue. We have a high debt, and I think we have to really address that. And I think we have to look where we invest usually in larger infrastructures and revenues. Should it pass, I certainly will support that going forward, as once we make a decision, we back that up. But Yeah, I think those are the reasons, and I wanted to just share those. Thank you.
Councilmember Strobel.
I appreciate all, I want to say, I appreciate all the work and thought that staff put into the TIF proposal, including answering all my questions that I had throughout the process here. I also can appreciate that this is a way maybe to access funds to make improvements, probably faster than going through the normal CIP process to maintain the trails. And I can also appreciate the intent to try and help out an inner city neighborhood. But I tried, and I just can't support it for multiple reasons. The but-for clause, which we talked about in a lot of the TIFs, I absolutely don't feel it meets the but-for clause. We're told that future development listed in the project plan would not happen but for the proposed improvements listed in the plan. We're accounting for future developments, a currently built dorm with future retail space, which we just talked about. This is not getting built but for the TIF, but it is built. We also have a developer who currently owns the whole 500 block between Water Street and Menominee Street and has given us notice of his intent to develop that area regardless of whether we rebuild the bike trail or add river overlooks there. I think the same developer also owns the 300 block and has an intention of building something there. Then we have the new university development coming forward on Menominee Street, and I think the private incentive to develop this whole area is clearly going to happen with or without the TIF. So I don't know of anybody in this room that actually thinks that private development won't happen if we don't have the TIF. So for me, the but-for doesn't really work. As part of the proposed improvements, so I do like the idea of fixing up the trail, buying the other properties along Menominee Street. But because they're listed as a project cost in a TIF doesn't mean it's going to happen. So unless they are in a redevelopment zone, which they're not, we'll have to wait for the owners to decide to sell, and even then, we'll probably be competing with other buyers for those properties. If we had agreements in place that when they went on the market, we would have the right of first refusal, then I think it would be a valid project cost. Again, we actually could plan and budget to have monies available to acquire these properties as we have done with other homes in the city without the TIF. That leaves parking lot and the neighborhood plan as the only two remaining proposed improvements. And again, the parking lot's not inside the TIF, and when those homes are purchased and raised, it actually lowers the taxable property values for the rest of the citizens outside the TIF. And I don't see how that necessarily increases the value or spurs new development in the area. The neighborhood plan is unique and one of the few that I think we can find in the state. I think on paper it seems like it could be very helpful, but the parameters for its use are too unclear for me at this time. And we can still include the neighborhood in TIF 11 if we wanted to. I believe that neighborhood already has developers knocking down old housing stock and building new buildings, and I think a better way to control what is built there is through zoning and the comp plan. So I guess these are my multiple reasons I just can't support it at this time. But again, like Councilmember Tewalt, once the decision's made, I'll support everything going forward.
And further discussion, Councilmember Von Hayden.
I concur with Councilmember Tewalt and Strobel in relationship to this TIF. I have a hard time taking a property that's previously built and including in it and losing the tax revenue for the citizens of Eau Claire for 20 years on this. Yes, hopefully this would produce additional revenue, which would generate additional tax dollars, but we're taking tax dollars out of it. The items that are related to the development and historic Randall and those funds, yes, we can provide those out of TIF 11, or we can find other ways to support those through our capital budget. But I think at this point in time, TIF 12 is too small, and it doesn't accomplish what we want it to accomplish. And I think we'd be better off using other alternative methods to come up with funding for these projects.
And Councilmember Worthman.
Thank you, Council President. Just a few reminders for my fellow council members that the Neighborhood Association, which is very active, does support this and does feel like this is a positive thing. Business leaders in the Water Street Business District have also supported this plan, and they think it will be helpful. And I think what we're talking here tonight about I don't doubt that, there has been intermittent, projects and things. And if I think even back on the last 10 years of city council, we see projects here and there in the Water Street corridor. What we're really talking about is speeding up that process over the next 20 years, and the TIP probably won't even go that long, but speeding up that process. The things that have been mentioned as possibilities down the road are nothing compared to what I think potentially could be developing out along Water Street and the Menominee Street corridor. And I think what we're looking at, what we're doing here today is actually setting up success that we probably can't envision right now for 15 years from now, for 20 years from now. And I think if we let it be, if we let things go, we'll see somewhat of the same sort of redevelopment that we've seen over the last 40 years, that kind of pace. But I think we have a lot more opportunity. And again, as I mentioned before, one of the main things that we heard as criticisms on the downtown, our downtown redevelopment efforts is, what about our investments in neighborhoods? When are you going to address that? That was probably the number one criticism I heard from the voters with facts and all those folks who came in here. And this is that opportunity. They should all be in here tonight saying, what a wonderful opportunity for the city council and the community to come behind a neighborhood and give money back, figure out a way to lift folks, improve folks' lives. This is that opportunity. So I hope my fellow council members will reconsider their thoughts on this. The opportunity is huge here. I really believe that.
And further discussion. Councilmember Klinkhammer.
Thank you. I appreciate the healthy skepticism about TID financing and TIF District 12 specifically. But it seems to me, listening to some of the arguments about this, that there are a couple of points that are being missed. One, when we went through the comp plan revision, that neighborhood revitalization was one of the key, most important changes and strengthening factors in the comp plan. Number two, this TIF district isn't being established to spur development. That's not the intent. I mean, because we're confident that the development is going to occur, and especially with what's going to happen farther down on Menominee Street, the development is going to occur within this district. To take advantage of that development, to make a significant impact in one of the most historical neighborhoods of the city, and the potential that impact can mean for other neighborhoods within our community, I think is an opportunity we can't overlook and we can't pass up. So.
And further discussion. Councilmember Strobel.
I appreciate Councilmember Klinkhammer, and there's valid points to it, so I appreciate all that. But I did ask the question last night about the anticipated developments here, and the question was, are you saying that those will not occur but for the TIF? And the answer that I got was yes. So.
And further discussion.
If I may respond to that, if there's any aspect of the but-for clause, it's the but-for clause regarding the impact that we can have on neighborhood revitalization. That's not going to happen. I mean, we have attempted a significant number of ways to fund neighborhood revitalization, and the money isn't there. We don't have that opportunity to impact these neighborhoods, but for this. Let's take advantage of a part of the community that is going to develop, in all likelihood will develop very successfully, and use that development in a positive manner to strengthen and I guess that's enough, just to strengthen that neighborhood.
Councilmember Tewalt.
Thank you, Council President. I think it's clear we have two different lenses, and the wisdom perhaps we always try and follow. Let us disagree but not be disagreeable, and I have seen none of that thus far. There is one on the fiduciary requirements that I would like to see us start moving away from debt and funding these things directly. I think that's a higher level than saying someday we'll pay it in the future. And I understand the urgency or the increase, but my main locus is decreased debt, and I understand the other points and look forward to the vote. Thank you.
And further discussion? As others have announced, the chair is very much in favor of the creation of this TID and finds its timing to be perfect. What better time to create a TID when development is staring you in the face and you can capture that increment? We don't have to go and seek development. It's staring us in the face, and we can thereby take advantage of capturing that increment to help the neighborhood, as has been pointed out by fellow council members. I find it very worthy of an aye vote. And with that, please call the roll.
Councilmember Strobel,
No.
T-Wall,
No.
Von Hayden,
No.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman,
Aye.
Jean,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Kincaid,
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Mitchell.
Aye.
And that resolution passes 7-3. Thank you, Mr. Winzens. We have 3 ordinances for work tonight. Item 22 is the first of them, with an ordinance amending Chapter 9.76 of the Code of Ordinances entitled Park and Public Grounds to include public art encroachments. Mr. Peppinger, did you have any follow-up? Planned follow-up? Sorry?
Only if you have questions.
Okay. Questions of staff regarding this ordinance? On a motion then by Councilmember Von Hayden? Yeah. Seconded by Councilmember Mitchell. Item 22 is moved, and that makes discussion in order. Councilmember Strobel.
Clarification on the council's role in this, if I could ask for that.
Could you elaborate a little bit more, a role in making this decision?
No. I think we got an email somewhere from the city attorney. Item, I think it's here, let me just go to my iPad. Just what is the council's approval process on this? Once it's approved, once the ordinance is approved, then when the art comes forward, just if you could elaborate on the process that will be used, I guess that's what I'm looking for. The process we'll use to approve the art and the locations and that type of thing.
Sure.
And how will the council be involved?
Sure. I went into a little bit in depth with my presentation just because sometimes ordinances just don't show you what the whole process will be. But typically, if an artist will come forward, we talked last night about the Public Arts Council and how it originated. If an artist would come forward, they would submit an application form and they can take 2 different routes on this, and perhaps wasn't clear on that. They can submit an application directly to the city as long as they comply with all the requirements of doing so, or they can go through the route of the Public Art Council where they can help them through the application process. Once that is completed, they would submit that to the city of Eau Claire. That would be to the Community Services Department. At that point, depending upon where the art location is requested, it would either go through the Waterways and Parks Commission if it was something that was going to be placed in a park. They would get a presentation and they would make a recommendation for approval. And then ultimately, any of the application submittals will come to the city council for approval.
Thank you.
Any further questions while Mr. Pippinger's up here? Okay, thank you. Further discussion is in order. Councilmember Mitchell.
Well, I have to say that as I read this, I'm wanting to say that nothing takes the joy out of public art more than a city ordinance. This is really, if I were to read this, I would say, well, they don't want any public art in this city. So I just want to, I think that there should be, or may need to be eventually, some way to make exceptions to this ordinance. And I'm not proposing that tonight. I think we need to try it, see how it works, and see how the process works. But I would be ready to revisit it at some point if we find that, that we're not getting any public art in the city.
Councilmember Beaton.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to city staff. I think that this is, since being elected a year and a half ago, this has definitely been the #1 topic that people have asked me about. How can we get more public art in our city? And I'm really excited to see how this ordinance pans out. To go off of Councilmember Mitchell's comment, we had that conversation as well in the Waterways and Parks Committee meeting. In fact, there was a suggestion to add some sentiment of love of weird art in the ordinance. And so I think that, you know, we can all kind of just share in that sentiment. But we did have that conversation that the ordinance is a little bit dry even though it's talking about art. But that's how it goes with ordinances. So anyway, thank you to staff, and really excited about this ordinance.
Councilmember Strobel?
And I'm going to support this too, and I think depending on how it's administered, it can be a really good thing. I know since the sculpture tour has come to downtown Eau Claire, it's just never ceases to amaze me how many people walk by looking at all those sculptures. I never thought that would be the case, but man, there's people out there all the time. So I think the sculpture tour has really added a great benefit to downtown, and maybe some of this other art will help the rest of the city.
Okay. No further discussion then. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember T-Wall,
Aye.
Von Hayden,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Workman,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Kincaid,
Aye.
Clinkhammer,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Strobel.
Aye.
And that ordinance is adopted. Item 23 is an ordinance rezoning property located east of Jeffers Road and west of Northwest Community Park from R1A to R2P, and adopt a general development plan. Do people have questions of Mr. Tufti? We had a lengthy presentation and a public hearing last evening. Councilmember Welk?
I have a question for the applicant, is that all right?
Mr. Phillipsek?
Yes.
Mr. Phillipsek, a question for you, if you don't mind.
Good evening. Just in regards to the development itself, are there covenants or will there be covenants? I know you mentioned the shared or common wall agreement between the two parties, but is there something throughout the development as well, and a covenant of some sort?
Yep, we have pretty strong covenants. So dealing with all the exterior features, yards, everything else. So, for sure.
Leasing those still an option to
Yeah.
an owner?
Yep, it will be.
Okay.
It will be an option, because a lot of people want to and need to at any given time.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Phillipsek. Any further questions then for anybody? So as is our custom, we're around to a motion by Councilmember Strobel. Are you comfortable with that? Councilmember Zhang? Seconded by Councilmember Klinkhammer. Okay. That puts the item on the table and makes discussion in order. Councilmember, oh, did you have, is that your light?
No,
from the- Okay, yeah. Councilmember Klinkhammer.
I don't know why I'm so compelled to comment on everything coming before us tonight. But anyway, are you? I'm glad, okay. I had a fair number of comments all put together about this, and I sat down at my desk and they're all here. So if you haven't read them, read them. The one point that I think that isn't in this letter from the city manager is that all the positive benefits that this development has, and apparently the one issue that is being contested other than twin homes versus single family, which I won't even get into, but the connectivity issue is pretty self-evident from a standpoint of providing emergency service access. It was part of that original plat that road was going to be connected when other properties developed around it. It provides access to the park. But the one thing that I find in the discussion and the comments that were made at the Plan Commission is that we are a city, we are a community, and there are parts of the community that haven't been developed. And if we move or buy a home in a development surrounded by undeveloped land, I think it's unrealistic to expect that that land isn't at some point going to develop, and that we may not agree with every part of that development that is going to occur after we own the home. But the positive aspects of connecting the road through Shorewood, making it possible for those residents to gain access to the park as it is constructed, providing greater assurance that their utilities are going to operate with less potential problems, that emergency services are going to be available regardless of what happens on one end of the road or not. I think there's too many positive things about this development to not support it.
Thank you. Councilmember Strobel.
I'm not going to support it at this time, and part of the reason is, and I will agree with the connectivity issue that Mr. Klinkhammer or Councilmember Klinkhammer talked about. But I think when these residents purchased their homes there, this land was zoned R1. I don't think they have a problem with connecting a road to another R1 single-family development, is what I heard. And when I get a petition from 80 citizens, I have to pay a little bit of attention to it, I think. And so I don't think building a road from one R1 to another R1 would be a problem for them. I think building it for changing the zoning to R2 changes the property they purchased and what they thought was going to happen there. And I don't think it's a bad development at all, but the concern that these residents had weighs on me, and so for that reason, I won't support it.
Councilmember Beaton.
Thank you. I also want to say that I don't necessarily personally have any issue with this development. In fact, I want to thank the developer for working so hard to provide more housing for our city. We're hearing that more and more, that people are having a hard time finding a home to live in. And I would have to agree that, the fact of the matter is that our city expands, and we need to develop it as we become more attractive to people to live here. However, I also can't ignore the folks who spoke to us yesterday and the 81 petition signatures asking for reconsideration of this rezoning. I would hope that, we might be able to see something different in this space at some point. But it's very clear to me that this just isn't the right fit for the neighborhood. So I won't be supporting either.
And further discussion? Councilmember Mitchell?
Well, I would just point out that the petition we got says nothing about rezoning. It's strictly about the access road. So I think we should keep that in mind. And that did seem to be, at least what I heard last night, more what I heard at the Plan Commission, the road was a main issue for people. And then the other issue is that some of those properties might end up being rented. And it was pointed out that even with R1 zoning, properties can be rented. And I think that the developer made it pretty clear that they were going to be, twin homes, but the possibility of renting to people who were empty nesters or young professionals. All of us on the council have rented at one time or another, and some of us rent right now, and we see that we are good citizens and that it's okay to be a renter. And I think that for that neighborhood, and especially for this petition, if you call it that, it has to do with that road. And then I go back to what Councilmember Klinkhammer said and what the city said, that road's been mapped for a long time, and that it's going to go through there at some point.
Councilmember Thibault.
Thank you, Council President. All good comments. The issue is the rezoning, and I don't find support for it. I know that area well. I travel it. It has a lot of townhomes, a lot of different things, and we need single-family homes in that area. So I'd like to see that stay with the zoning that it's designed for. And I agree with the previous point that that's why people buy. They see what the surrounding zoning is. Is that commercial? Is that what will be there? And that influences that. We had people speak to that. So I think it fits best for that community to be single family, and would love to see it come back, as we have done that to other developers, say, come back with a plan that fits the zoning that it is. And so for that reason, I'm sticking to keeping it zoned as it is currently zoned.
Councilmember Von Hayden.
I concur with the last people. As the district representative for this area, I've had a lot of phone calls from a lot of people out there. And yes, some of their concerns may not be 100% valid, but when they purchased their property, it was laid out in a certain way. And because of this, with the connecting road and going to the twin homes rather than private residents, there will be a major change in that area. And I think for that reason, I have to support what the residents have requested, and I have to vote no on this.
And further discussion. Councilmember Wells.
Thank you, Council President. I'm in support of a development, as others have mentioned. I think that the roadway is inevitable, and I think either way will happen if it's R1 or R2. But I'm in agreement that I'd like to see it stay R1. I think we are limited to the amount of available land now within the city water and sewer service area. And so to me, this is a valuable parcel in that regard, that it's still an option for single-family home ownership. And because we've expanded ourselves so far, right up to the highways surrounding all of us, and until we punch through and start venturing out beyond that area, we're limited to the amount of land that can be developed for single-family home. I think there's a demand for it. I know in my industry there is a demand for it. But I can appreciate the developer's investment. It's a huge investment for him, and I have the utmost respect for that developer and what he's done in previous developments, and I know that he would, carry that through with this area as well. But I think at some point we have to look at twin homes and what those are going to lead to. I think now today they are an attractive option. They're new, they're affordable, they're well built. And I'm worried about in 10 years and 15 years that's still going to carry through. As a single-family home being built and constructed with the ownership there, I see that having a stronger foothold in the future. And I guess I will support keeping it as R1.
And further discussion? There being none, clerk, please call the roll. And just as a reminder, an aye vote does adopt the rezoning. An aye vote adopts the rezoning.
Councilmember Von Hayden,
No.
Weld,
No.
Workman,
No.
John,
No.
Wheaton,
No.
Kincaid,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Strobel,
No.
T-Wall.
No.
And that rezoning request fails 7-3. Our last item tonight is an ordinance, an annexation, as follows, an ordinance, or, I'm sorry, in accordance with section 66.021 of the Wisconsin statutes, annexing to the city of Eau Claire part of the town of Washington, Eau Claire County, the Holsinger petition. Mr. Tufti.
This is the property that's on the east end of Harless Road. It's 2.0 acres of land. There is an existing single-family home on the site. Sanitary sewer and water is available in Harless Road. The request is consistent with our comprehensive plan, and the Plan Commission recommended approval.
Questions for Mr. Tufti? I see none. On a motion then by Councilmember Von Hayden, seconded by Councilmember Mitchell, item 24 is moved and discussion is in order. There being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Weld,
Aye.
Workman,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Wheaton,
Aye.
Kincaid,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Strobel,
Aye.
T-Wall,
Aye.
Von Hayden.
Aye.
And that ordinance is adopted. There are 3 ordinances for introduction, which is my duty to read into the public record. The first, an ordinance rezoning properties located on the south side of Hudson Street, west of 7th Avenue from RM to R2P. The second is an ordinance rezoning property at 3807 East Hamilton from R1 to R3P for an 8-unit apartment. And the third, an ordinance amending the sign code relating to temporary special use and exempt signs in the Central Business District, wall sign standards, and other changes. Does council wish to suspend the rules and take up any of these items? There being no such request, Mr. City Manager, announcements are in order.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only announcement I'd have is that the Eggs and Issue event with the legislators has been moved to the 29th of September. So if you have interest in going to that, I'm sure it's a joyful event like all, legislation that's written around art and other things. If you would like to go to that, please let Kathy know.
And announcements by council members? There being no further business then to come for this body, on a motion by Councilmember Klinkhammer, seconded by Councilmember Mitchell. We are adjourned without objection.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.